Welcome to the next episode of WT3, the podcast where we tell you, emerging technology founders, how to get from 0 to 1. Today, we are talking about running an emerging technology business. I'm joined today by Thomas and Ockert Loubser, the Chief Executive Officer at Core Decentralized Technology. Started as a one-man design agency focused on graphic design in 2002, became a self-taught developer at the age of 17, founded a full-time company in 2003 whilst in full-time studies. He expanded the company into advertising, digital programming, interactive media, print media, notable clients including McDonald's, South African Breweries, SAB, Biden Tires, Peace Foundation, and remains the CEO of that company. Developed a closed-loop accountability system, Pay Your Premium, PYP, for the funeral and underwriters industry in 2003, which processed over 1 billion transactions, including the use of distributed ledger technology and tokenization, and then sold the company in 2006. Advancements in digital imaging and connectivity. Ockert invented a proprietary graphics card in 2003 that converted analog signals to digital formats and pioneered the IP camera industry, installing a record 367 cameras with over 50 kilometers of blown fiber cables, and sold that to Venture in 2005. These are all at the same time, by the way. International expansion and blockchain innovation. Moved to Slovakia in 2012 with his father to develop TV Mall for Samsung smart TVs on the Tizen OS. Integrated Microsoft's Xbox camera systems for interactive clothing applications on TV. And established Core Blockchain with Yelem smart contract language and CoreTech ecosystem, later expanding to Arax. Okay, I mean, what else is there to say? I think we should all just give up and go home at this point. I feel like I'm wasting my weekend watching TV, man. Like, pleasure to have you with us.
It's very nice to be with you guys. Thank you very much for offering me the opportunity to have a conversation.
Our pleasure. So, I mean, it seems like you did a lot of this stuff at the same time. How did you get started?
Well, it was quite interesting. I was always into tech and advertising, and I don't know, for some other reason, I loved reading about law. My dad was always scared that I was going to be a lawyer because I was always like stating my cases and doing the things with him. But I always had a love for programming, understanding how things are working behind it. And my programming love actually started with hacking.
Nice.
As any good story would start, right?
Yeah.
So,
and then the FBI came.
No, I wasn't that proficient. So yeah, I was always trying to find ways of doing things, and one of the things that was like, for me, I would say probably fascinating was the torrents network itself, how it works, how the distributed files and packets and everything's working, and networking itself. I just started learning how to program. This was at a younger age, and when I had nothing else to do, if I didn't have a girl to kiss or a beer to drink without my parents knowing, So, so I was doing this many times, and then I went into. I did a course with advertising at a college. It was just like a summer's course for 2 weeks, and I fell absolutely in love with advertising. Primarily, like, this is also why I'm a Deadpool fan, and well, actually a Ryan Reynolds fan. That dry sense of humor and that little hidden message and the subliminal message behind these things. It's always for me. I used to watch TV to watch the adverts, not to watch the actual show or things. Because for me, if you had a good advert, back in the day in the 2000s. Adverts was it, it was like a very powerful message. If you have a look at, the chicken Mercedes-Benz advert that they had with the suspension, these types of things, the creative stuff behind it. And this was sort of like what I fell in love with. And I did this graphic design thing, and I loved being artistic. I always used to paint also and stuff like this. It was one of my subjects at school. And then I started the agency. I got my first client a little bit in 2002. I was still going to school. It was actually a nail parlor. It was my mom's nail lady, and she needed a new logo. And so I made the logo. I made a few things. She loved it. I liked actually what got me into it and what got me hooked was it wasn't the money or anything. It was actually her face. When she saw it, when she was like happy with it and she was excited, I actually got excited myself, and it kind of like gave me a different feeling. And ever since then, I got kind of like hooked on it. And when you start something small, and then when I was going into studies in 2003, I graduated from school. At the end of the year, because South Africa has the end of the year, but I was already running my business sort of like in 2013 2003 when I was 18 years old, and I was doing advertising and these types of things. And then when I went to go and study full time, I was running the business like fully. It was really like a full-time job. And I made a deal with my dad that I'll pay my own studies. I don't want him to pay for my studies. So this is why I worked full-time and I studied full-time to make sure that I could, do the things. And you very, very quickly start learning that graphic design can go much further, into UI UX design, into websites. And this was like when emerging tech, the internet became amazing, like websites, and you got to have a website, you got to have a landing page. It was like the big thing, like we got to have a landing page with sub pages and then microsites. And, oh yes, the sexy thing was microsites back in those days.
That's OG emerging tech what we're talking about here, right? Like that's really like we're all talking about emerging tech or AI, and no, it's like old school emerging tech websites, microsites. Wow,
this is kind of like the things. And what was really cool was when we went into other developments, communication, because being in South Africa and being in rural areas, there's multiple places where you don't have connectivity, and GPRS was like the connectivity, and to start learning to communicate over that and these types of things. This is kind of like what prompted me. And of course, my dad would come up with like he would say, "Hey, listen, check this out." And then of course I would start reading it. And my brother at that time, who was working with us, also he was also reading about things. He's also actually, I would say my brother is a genius, lazy, but a genius. He's a lot smarter than me, but he knows how to do certain things, which I can say is really cool. He's amazing with his selling abilities and his way to connect with people. So he was like the main sales guy. He was also into programming a little bit. And, we would sit together, myself, my brother, and my father, and we would work together on a project, or he'd bring something, he would like just throw it on the table and say, learn how to use this, and this might be your future. This is what he did with the PAX device, by the way, when we built the POS system. And, we said, okay, well, what can we do with it? And then funeral parlors came out,
What happened? Like, why funeral parlors?
Yeah, exactly. Like how that connectivity is super interesting, because that is not a business that I would say, or an industry to say like, oh yeah, that will benefit immensely of technology.
Well, actually, it's a really interesting story. So my dad was going to get the chips for the graphics card that we developed and that we designed, for processing analog to digital, because back in those days, kids, we didn't have that. So basically what we did is we designed this card. I mean, the card was the size of your table. I mean, it was gigantic. Wow. And we actually got these specific chips, and he actually flew to Asia. And he had a stopover on one of the places, and he had to make a payment because he bought something. I think it was like a chocolate or a sandwich or something. I don't know. And he saw this device standing on the table. It wasn't connected to anything, and it was just this. And they said, "Here, you use this to pay." And he was like, "How the hell is this working?" And he picked it up, and he just turned around, and he saw the thing, and he's like, "Can I write down the information of this?" And then when he got into Asia, he looked up the company and made an appointment with them. And he got one of the devices, came back, threw it on the table, and he said, "This is the future, gentlemen." And he said, "Learn how to use it." The SDK was in Chinese. By the way, I had to be in a sort of relationship with a Chinese girl to get the translation for about 3 months. Lovely girl, by the way. I really, really enjoyed her. She was really, really sweet, really nice girl. Used to work at our favorite Chinese restaurant, which we used to get takeout on a Friday. But so we took this POS device and got the SDK translated, and we started working on it. And the interesting part was, looking at the connectivity. So you had to insert a SIM card. So then we went and bought prepaid SIM cards and shoved them in and got the data. So used to there have data packages, and then used to have airtime. This is what we used to call it. So your airtime that you would buy would be the airtime that you can send an SMS, or you can basically make a phone call, or you have data, which is GPRS network. That was fast. Wow, that was super duper. But the messages that you can send over a GPRS network, which was when MMS came out, was 32 characters, or it was just before MMS. So you had to create sub menus and all kinds of things. And the reason why we did it for the funeral parlor was one day we sat and we were actually busy talking, about this device. And there was a gentleman who owned a funeral parlor, and he said, this would be cool if we can have an accountability system, or something, because our biggest problem is we're out in receipt books. So we sat down and we had a look at the challenges, and we kind of brainstormed a little bit, and then this accountability actually came into place, where we said, okay, right, well, how can we do it with distributed technology and things, and actually secure that the data is decentralized, so that it's not on the local device, or that it's not on just on a singular server, but that it's distributed, because they have branches all over, and it's got to be connected, and it's got to find the fastest route, because GPRS is not the strongest signal. You don't have a lot of, connectivity that you can actually, or a constant connectivity that you can actually send it across. So you got to actually sort of spread the packets and do these types of things. So came up with a whole principle in the design of it. And then that day it was sort of a form of tokenization, which, we can call it tokenization now, but it didn't have a name back then. So this was the important part, because when you go into rural areas, there's no connectivity. But if you take one step to the right, then all of a sudden have 1 or 2 bars for GPRS, and you can actually do the connectivity or do the transaction. And it was primarily about the accountability of who paid their policies, because there were some people that didn't pay the policies and some people that did pay the policies, but they would, the collectors would take the books, which was manual written receipts, throw the book away. Half the money goes in this pocket, the other half goes into the other pocket. And then in the end, they come there and they say, oh, this is what I collected, but they have no idea actually who paid the policy or anything. When we put it into the first guy, which was I would still call him a dear friend of mine. When we put it into the first funeral parlor, we upped his income with more than 45% of his collections that he was getting. It put his business into such a position that he could expand, and he became the biggest in the whole region. All the other funeral parlors, of course, started following, and then the underwriters started seeing what we're doing. So the underwriters started calling us and started saying, hey, listen, we want to start understanding. And of course, we then wanted to make it into a closed loop banking system, and the banks actually kept us on a thread for 2 years, 2 to 3 years. And I mean, we knew some really up there people. And we were trying to get them to give us a treasury account to allow, for closed loop banking systems to withdraw there, and, to distribute the cash there so that they don't have to deposit it into the banks and things like this. But in the end, they didn't want to do that. But we found other ways of doing certain things. And then, of course, we sold that off. That's kind of the reason why.
It's awesome.
But I would argue that most likely there would be no one else to, I mean, unless you're local, you're able to see that problem and then implement it as well. Because I've seen very often in our with our users, our clients, generally, tech people, they're like, oh yeah, we're gonna do this really crazy thing in Africa. I'm like, okay, do you have local connections there? Do you know where to go? Yeah, no, but we'll just roll out, and it's no, you don't just roll out in Africa where there's no connectivity. Have you thought about the Android like, which Android like system they're currently on, this kind of stuff. I'm saying this because I want to underscore like how important it is that you are there, that you understand the market, because otherwise you won't. The idea is great, but you won't be able to make it as big and make it as valuable for people as you did, right?
Yeah, well, you see, there was like this really cool bank, which was Wizard Bank, which was actually also one of our customers. I did a lot of things for them in advertising also. And Wizard Bank was actually rolling out, they were doing KYC via MMS, which was like unheard of. And this was before M-Pesa and all the other banks which are in Africa and things. And we kind of like did a lot of work with them. And integrated in certain parts with them. But what I can say is they actually have more knowledge, and the way they use a smartphone or a phone compared to how we do, it's entirely different. And I can tell you, most of them have 2 phones or 3 phones that they carry with them, because they do certain things. So they run their entire like local small crop farming off of the mobile, and they utilize like different types of tools to actually do this. It's incredible how creative they are by not having a computer, but their phone is their computer. And this is the whole thing, like, you have to understand how a rural community works, and that if you want to enter into a community, it's not about you making money. Actually, it's about uplifting the community. If the project is not about uplifting the community, then you're not going to get anywhere, because every single person is actually contributing towards the community. And this is how most rural communities are working together. They have their own kind of like, I want to say even own justice system. They have their own communication system. They have their own possibilities and trading systems that they're actually doing. I mean, barter trading there is insane. I'll give you a dozen eggs for 2 potatoes or whatever, and they do different types of barter trading. I mean, there you buy live chickens and things. Yeah, you do see cash and stuff like this. Cash is king there, of course, because the closest infrastructure that you have is like 60 to 100 kilometers away from the little rural area that you're in. There's no bank, there's no nothing. So how do you survive, and how do you do certain things? You do it through services. I mean, I know of kids that would go 10 kilometers, 20 kilometers a day walking to school, and they don't wear shoes, barefoot. And trust me, like those gravel roads and the thorns and stuff and the bushveld, you basically have leather sole feet that you gotta walk on. It's insane. But these are the amazing things that you actually learn when you're working in the rural areas itself.
You get very creative, I guess, as well, for that matter, right?
Yeah, it makes you actually question the tech of how you can apply it, that it will be uplifting for the community. And the interesting part was the service that we helped is actually an upliftment in the community, because also the funeral parlors support the communities quite a lot. They invest into the community, they help the community, and also it's their tradition. So very important is to understand the cultures of the rural communities that you want to provide a service to. It's not just like, oh, it'll work here in the first world. Doesn't mean it's going to work in the third world. This is 100%.
So, and I think that's a very, very strong point, and I think people tend to forget that. I want to touch on a piece that you mentioned earlier. You said, like, you encounter challenges with banks and payment divisions, like, and that kind of led you to blockchain. How did that work out? Was that at that same moment that you were working with Pay Your Premium and the parlors, that you were like hitting against like kind of that banks and the status quo of the banks, or?
Yeah, well, payments has always been an issue, right?
Anywhere. It doesn't matter if you're in the first world or third world. Fair.
But what I can say is we weren't so much focused on the payment system back then, because it was more like a cash transaction that you pay your premium, you tap or swipe your your magnetic strip card, or later on we could actually put in the chip when the chip cards came out. The biggest problem or the biggest challenge was to take the step to the next stage was basically to make it into a closed loop banking system, which it already was. We already built all the tech. It was just connecting basically what we call a treasury account or a settlement account or a holding account, a custodial account, where the funds can be in and then, it can be withdrawn and things like this. But the banks didn't want to do that. And of course, then the banks started rolling out with their own POS terminals and things like this. I'm not saying that we showcased it, but I gave a lot of tech and a lot of ideas to a few banks in South Africa when they were like talking to us about it. But this was, I would say, this was already one of the first triggers for us about payments, because from there on, like I did the IP cameras also, which was also led from the analog to digital when IP cameras came out and rolled that in. By the way, that was probably one of the most terrible jobs. I had to crawl into spaces which I never thought I would fit. And my father would just say, just go and do it. I'd be like, I won't fit. He's like, do it. Get it done. Just get it done. You got to you got to get that cable through. And I mean, having blown fiber at that stage, it was like the most high-tech thing you could have, is blown fiber with IP cameras and things like this. It was an insane job with like man traps and all kinds of stuff. It was actually for one of the biggest electronic sales companies in South Africa, still today. They moved from one site, then they moved back to that site there where we installed it, and I'm not sure if the tech is still there, but I think the blown fiber is still there because there's so much of it.
So, but how do you go from all of this, right? Like there's so many things you have done, like over the last, I don't know, what is it, 20, 30 years? Like we talked about feeling insignificant. I'm just gonna go out of the screen soon, and then you're like, all right, core blockchain, I'm gonna do this. Like, is that just like the kind of roll up of all these experiences, all these perspectives you found?
Yeah, well, when my dad and I decided, so we sold some of the businesses off, some of the businesses we're still invested in, and these types of things. And when we moved to Slovakia, there was other reasoning behind it also. It had to do with my health, but I don't really particularly want to share so much about that. But then basically what happened is we got an opportunity here in Slovakia. So we came here and we started working in Slovakia, started doing certain things, a little bit in technology. My dad used to also have an import and export company of trading. So we did a bit of that. And then I came up with the idea of an e-commerce platform, and I presented it to my father, and it was basically like interactive media. So I was still busy running the advertising agency in South Africa. And I was heavily into interactive media, like using projectors and infrared cameras where you could actually projectile a football and then it can actually calculate your kick that you can do at the speed with the angle of how the ball should go. And, it was also like biometrics and all kinds of things that were coming into play and, all kinds of like really cool, interesting things. And we were still running the valuation side of the property in South Africa, which is actually a company called Rode, RODE and Associates. They're a really cool company. They do all the valuations for all the big banks. They're like the biggest property valuators. Erwin Rode is like world renowned for his calculations, and we actually built those types of calculations. So all of this interactive media and the development of these types of platforms kind of like got me into ledgers and distributed technology and these types of things. And basically, when I was working in the interactive media and also in the advertising, I mean, we did SAB where we projectiled an entire beer foam thing on one of their events that they had. And when you walked across the stage, the beer would foam around and move out of your way. So we had like 8 projectors, which were like running simultaneously over the stage, which was really cool. And then I kind of like thought, well, let's make an interactive newsletter for in-stores. So we made an interactive newsletter where we used the Xbox 360, and then Samsung actually called us in, Samsung South Africa, and I flew back to South Africa from Slovakia, and I went and had a meeting with them, and we were presenting this also to all the other agencies like Huntley Scarre, King James, Ogilvy, these types of agencies. We actually delivered the coolest little package. By the way, if you ever want to present your product or a new product, make sure that you do it in an old school way, specifically if it's in interactive media. You remember this old red goggle with the thing that you had to...
Oh, yes. With the different coloring.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I mean, the yo-yo. And we used to have what is called chappies, which is like a little bubble gum, and you unwrap it. And the most interesting part about it wasn't the bubble gum, because the bubble gum was terrible. But it was the did you know facts that you had. I mean, it had everything in there. It was amazing. And this was like the type of interactive things that I said, well, we need to bring that type of experience into things. So we made like a little package which looked like a suit or like a white collared shirt with a black tie, which is how we delivered the packages to the agencies. And inside was like a zip lanyard. It was this old thing that we custom made that actually like gave you a little story of the introduction of where it's going with interactive media. We had the bubble gums. We had a few other things in there, which was like old school games. And we basically gave an invite to all the agencies to come to a showcasing. Every single agency pitched up. They wrote us. They even said, "I love your packaging. I can't say no to this." So then basically, like we presented, we had 3D transparent screens that you can stick on shop fronts that had a whole 3D car that you could move around for Skoda. There was even if you walked past a wall, there was like things that happened. We had a bunch of things, and then we built the application, which had the Xbox 360 camera, which you could actually scroll through a newsletter. And then I thought, well, let's take it one step further. And when Samsung saw us, or Samsung told us, he said, I'll never forget, the guy sat there and he said, this is cool, but if you want to make it sexy, then you got to use the camera, and you shouldn't have anything else standing. It should just be the TV. So I took his advice. Thank you, by the way. And I went and I built it with the guys directly, just the camera itself. And we made it into a fully fledged TV mall, which was for the Tizen platform, which you could then actually go and select your different products and brands and all kinds of things. And then actually it was using your biometrics to actually measure in your living room, like your sizing. And then it would also map the clothing on you. So if you choose a jacket, if you choose a hat, and then you could share it on Facebook, and you could sort of like say, should I buy the outfit? Should I do this? All kinds of things. So we were working on that. But the biggest challenge was the payment. And this was the biggest challenge, because
that was the challenge, the payment.
Yeah, yeah. That was no, and I will explain to you why it was the challenge.
What?
The biggest challenge was the payment, because I spoke to Skrill, I spoke to Authorize.net, I spoke to 2Checkout, I spoke to the banks, I spoke to every single person that can give me a damn merchant account, and I was like, can you split the payment so that it can go directly to the merchants, but you just receive one? No. And I mean, at one stage, I was like, okay. So I got quite far with Skrill. And then I was like, okay. And then when I said split the payment, no. And I was like, oh, damn it. And then I met Rastislav, and I was like running through some challenges of some other things that I needed to build. And Rastislav walked in to my dad's apartment, and I interviewed him in my father's apartment. I was still working out of my apartment, which is opposite my dad's. And we interviewed him, and I said, this is the guy. And my dad said, okay. And hired him. And he was listening to me fighting the whole time with them. And he just came up to me and he said, we could use blockchain. And I said, are you swearing at me, or what are you telling me? And he was like, Bitcoin. And I was like, oh, yeah, I heard about it. But, and he then explained to me how the ledger works and everything. And that was actually the thing that attracted me, was the ledger. And the way that you could actually split it. And then we started talking about when Ethereum started coming out also, and we started looking at smart contracts and these types of things. It was really insane. And And I said to him, okay, right, well, let's go to my father. He first said we can do it with an exchange, and we need to build an exchange, and then we can do these things. And we were like, okay, fine. So that was before the smart contracts. So then we went to my dad. I explained it to my father with Rastislav. And my dad said, okay, well, give me some time to think about it. So, and then we went back, and about 2 days later or 3 days later, my dad called me in and with Rusty. And we sat down, and he said, well, I had a look at all these blockchains, and he said, I don't think this is going to work. He said, we're going to have to build our own. And as Rastio and I were like, do you have any idea how much work this is? Of course, I said it in a little bit different words there to him, but yeah, and that's how it actually came about. And we started understanding like how you can split the payments, how you can do certain things. And today we have where you can buy multiple products from multiple merchants in multiple countries and multiple currencies with a single transaction, which is the nicest part.
It's what I really like about this is that your dad said, yeah, we need to build it. And you're like, yeah, that's insane. Let's do it.
Well, he first said, how much time? I said to him, 6 years. Well, Rastio and I first like communicated with each other a little. And then it was like, how long then? And we said 6 years. He said, okay, let's do it. And I was like, are you sure? He's like, yeah. I'm like, okay, we'll do it. And, this is actually this is where CoreTech actually started. It was because of the splitting of payments that we couldn't do. And we said, okay, right. And every add-on, every part of the ecosystem that we built was actually a derivative where you run into a challenge and you need to solve the challenge. And then it becomes such a big project that it becomes a derivative of its own. And this is sort of like the rigmarole effect that happens. And sometimes it's a good thing and sometimes it's a bad thing. That's the one thing.
Oh yeah, I mean, like there's definitely feature creep and scope creep. I think, like in these kind of situations, you're like, oh, I can't solve this. Like, there's no tool in the market. I'll build it myself. Like, yeah.
Well, I will tell you that's exactly the approach. I can't find a solution. I'm building it on my own.
I have a lot of developer friends. They are literally the same, not on the scope that you're doing, but they're like, wait, there's nothing. I need to pay for this. No, I'll build it myself, and it ends up, yeah. Well, but I mean. This is super interesting because I think for our next segment, it really shows like where you come from and how much value that experience gives, like to that point where you're like, all right, we're gonna build this, and then start building it, and then because when did you start building CoreTech, the CoreTech ecosystem? When did it start?
2013.
So that's 11 years, and you're still going strong. Actually, I think you're going very, very strong at the moment. So that's like, it's great, but. That's 11 years of developing an insane idea. But I think 99% of the people would have said 11 years ago, that is an insane idea.
I can tell you, I've had more people say to me, you're doing too much. You will fail. This will never work. You don't know what you're talking about. You're wasting my time, this kind of stuff. And we just said, okay, we'll see. And the worst part is like, if you say that to me, Rastio, and my father, we kind of like to prove a point. We're a little bit hard-headed.
For a couple of weeks.
Well, it's not being hard-headed. It's just, if you have a look today, if you say deepen, it's now like everything's deepen, everything's RWA. If you have a look at what we started off, this was exactly it. There was just there was not a name for it, and it's exactly decentralized storage, decentralized communication, decentralized assets that you actually have, which is real world assets that you can bring into a digital world. This is why we have the digital identity and all these types of things, because you start seeing as you're building these types of things, specifically when you're building like a whole new network. If you just build the network and you say, well, there it is, congratulations, and you have no use cases in today's day and age, what the hell are you going to use the network for? What's the purpose? So, and this is exactly the thing that we did is we said, okay, right, well, let's create a purpose for the network itself so that it can create a natural supply and demand for the coin and the token itself. But we didn't build the blockchain for the coin. We built it for that, in my humble opinion, sexy immutable ledger. And of course, the network itself, being able to build the smart contract platform, which allows you to execute anything. And then comes, you got to store data somewhere, because it's all about data settlement, data transacting. Regardless if it is a financial transaction or whether you're trying to send a file or a picture or whatever, there's a settlement that needs to take place, which is all data. And this is exactly the whole thing. This is actually what MasterCard Network is. MasterCard Network is just an update on a ledger, which is an IOU that gets settled 7 days down the line. And that's why some transactions, sometimes you make a payment with a MasterCard Network and it takes forever and a day for the transaction to actually be updated. But basically what it is in the banking system is just saying, this bank owes this bank now, or, update this ledger to that ledger. And there can be a corresponding bank that can say, okay, right, well, I'm holding the asset right now, or, these types of things. So this is sort of like the interesting part about it. And if you think about it, it's exactly what we built in our settlement network. It's just we can do a real tangible asset in 42 seconds.
I also now see where that passion comes from and why this has succeeded. but I think this is great. And I want to a little bit expand on that, because we're kind of hitting now, so much experience, so much perspective, but always I think with the point, hey, something didn't work, so we made it work. We'd love to hear a little bit more, because a lot of our public and a lot of our viewers and listeners, they're emerging tech founders or serial entrepreneurs. They come from Web2 space to Web3 space, and I think getting advice from someone like you is extremely valuable, because you have in my opinion, I think the right approach. Other people may say well, no.
Yeah, he's crazy.
But I think, but you're utility first always, right? I think that's where you're you would have a tattoo that would probably be tattooed on your head. So I would love to go into the next segment, Charlie. Maybe you can run that about the advice, because I think there's a lot to pull from here. Oh yeah, if you like the content so far, please subscribe, share. We'd love to see our content reshared. We love what we do, and we hope to see our content back on other people's timelines. So thank you in advance, and please subscribe on any platform. I don't know. That's it.
Love it.
Okay. So jumping into the sort of second portion of the pod, where we're really looking for sort of quick fire advice for startup founders. I'm actually going to add one of my own, given the introduction conversation. I really want to know how you manage all of these things. There's that old adage, which is entrepreneurs fall into this trap all the time, trying 6 or 7 different things and not succeeding at any of them because they dilute their efforts and their energy so much. Seems like you've done that successfully. How did you manage your time? Was it just you don't sleep, or
cocaine is a hell of a drug?
Lots of Red Bull.
I've never been much of a sleeper. I do have my days that I crash, and of course I have my dumb days. But what I can say is there's one key secret. Get a team and then trust your team. The important thing is to give them the chance to participate in certain decisions that you're making, because that's why you hire them, is to advise you, and because they're better than you. And you got to give your team that freedom. That freedom brings out a lot more creativity. And the most important thing is it's all about passion. You got to live, breathe, eat, sleep, everything around it. And it's got to be the first thing that's on your mind when you wake up. It's got to be the last thing on your mind when you go to bed. For me, I don't do this for money. Money is the last aspect. If you do something that you're so passionate about and that is that is actually making a real difference. Money comes by itself. It comes naturally. The most important thing for me is to make the difference, is to truly bring it to where it needs to be. And that's what drives me. That's what motivates me. And I can say our team, which again, I go back to them. They are absolutely phenomenal. Rastislav and I handpicked the first few hundred. And now lately we don't know, but we've put in very specific team leads, project managers, and product owners and things like this. And we've given them the responsibility to be able to make very important decisions. Of course, they run certain decisions by us. And, just today we had an awesome meeting with the Core team and with the team leads. And basically, what I can say is we leave that up to them in certain aspects. And once when you start on your own and you're as a startup, yes, don't think that sleep and family and personal life is much. It's not. And still today, I really have much of a personal life. I work 7 days a week. I work, for example, okay, last night I had a bit of sleep because I knew I had to do the podcast and I needed to not have bags under the eyes. But what I can say is on average, you'll find me online up until 2-3 in the mornings, and then you'll find me online again anything from 4 to 5 in the mornings. That's when I wake up, and that's when my day starts. Sometimes I have 1 hour, sometimes I have 3 hours of sleep. But it is a lifestyle that I have. And the thing is having a startup, it's a lifestyle. This is something that I'm going to tell anyone that wants to start it. It's a lifestyle. There's nothing else. This is what if you're going to go all in, if you want to make it successful, that's got to be your heart. That's got to be everything. Forget about your personal life. Forget about anything else right now, because that is the thing that if you want to really achieve it, you got to be it, and it doesn't stop. And I can say it is not for the faint-hearted, and it is not for someone that thinks, okay, right, they're going to be the boss. You work for your team. Your team is your boss. And if you don't make them the most top priority, then I can tell you right now, you will not succeed in the culture of the team itself. It is the most important thing is that they need to know that they are the most important. They also need to know that they are appreciated for the work that they do. And the environment that you need to create is exceptionally important. And that should be actually your morals in your company, is creating an amazing environment that they want to be a part of. Someone wants to come and work here. It's actually an honor to come and work here. I can't tell you how many interviews I was in where the team leads first had, we had the technical interview, then there is a team lead interview, then they do a psychological interview. I don't know why, but they do that. And then, of course, once we get through those rounds, then sometimes when Rastislav and I have some time, they meet Rastislav and myself. And it's been so many times that I've had someone that, they come into the meeting and they say, it's such an honor to work in your company, to have the opportunity to just, think I'm going to have the opportunity to work here. And it is because of the environment that the team leads now have fallen into, of exactly that is the principle of how the team should run. And that's the success actually to bringing a project to life like this, is you've got to create that type of environment. If you don't have that environment, I can tell you now, hostile environment, saying, I'm the boss and that's it, and you'll do as I say. Hell no. That's not how it works. How it works is being able to listen, being able to understand. Of course, sometimes you have to make an executive decision. And of course, sometimes you do get in arguments or in disagreements with team leads or things like this. But at the end of the day, remain calm, professional, and understand the point of view. Sometimes you might change your mind on that point of view, because they might have very compelling arguments to say, this is why we need to go this route. And even if it sometimes takes longer, understand the longer route is actually the lasting route, because it's the harder route. If you think you're going to take shortcuts also, that's not going to happen. Shortcuts never, doing a quick fix and stick it with some spit and there you go. That's not going to help you. That might solve something now temporarily, but it will for sure not last, specifically when you need to scale or do something like that.
I think I know that we're rapid firing this, Charlie, but I just wanted to mention, I think for people who have been in management, or this is an excellent example of situational leadership, right? You are there to inspire and to motivate when it's needed. And you're when you're not needed, you're you're there. You motivate. You coach, and that's it. You let professionals run their course, because we always said if you push professionals, they're gonna push back.
Yeah.
Because you don't need to push professionals. They're already good at their job. They already want to do the best thing, right? So you're gonna push them harder. They're not gonna work harder. They're gonna push back oh, well, Ockert, we're not gonna do this.
Oh, I've had that many times.
Yeah, I can imagine. It's been you do it for 11 years, so there's an absolute journey for that. I think in and on itself that could be an hour of discussion. So I don't want to spend too much on it, but for our viewers, this is a super important point. Read about this, because this, as Ockert said, it makes or breaks your organization and your product and everything around it.
Exactly. This is and to have that culture, you have to understand you actually build a culture in your own company. I like to say that we are a rural community. We're not a sports team. We're not running a damn race, and we're not trying to win a damn race. What we're actually trying to do is we're building a community, or we're a rural community that works together, that uplifts the business, because the business takes care of all of us. And your team members are a part of this. And you, as the owner, your responsibility is to make sure that they're taken care of. Your responsibility is to make sure that they have what they need. Your responsibility is to make sure that they're motivated. Your responsibility is basically to be there for them, because they're the ones that's going to take, if many times, I know a lot about tech, but some of the tech I don't have all the knowledge of, and they do. And that's where you got to take the back seat, and you got to let them take the steering wheel and drive you to the end result. And if you've built the culture of the rural community, that basically everyone believes in the product and believes in the end goal and lives the end goal and trusts the end goal, that's when you've succeeded. Then you've already succeeded. And that is the most important part, is having that exact type of culture in your company, because then they take the best interest at heart of the company itself. They have a look at how they can save you money. They have a look at how they can do things better. They have a look. And sometimes I think, I've had to sit in meetings where guys say to me, I don't know how to say this to you. And I say, just get it out and let's just talk about it. And it doesn't help that you get angry, and it doesn't help that you shout or that you do something. You got to understand the reasoning to it. And sometimes screw-ups happen. The only way to fix it is not to be angry about it. Is say, okay, right, let's sit up, let's dust ourselves off. How are we going to solve it? How are we going to change it? And that's exactly the approach that you got to take. You got to take the positive approach. You got to take the proactive approach. Never take the aggressive or the negative approach, because it doesn't help, because then actually you bring negativity into the team.
I agree. Moving on to the next topic, finding creative funding. This is interesting because you've got kind of, I suppose, an experience here of looking beyond traditional financing. Can you sort of walk us through that in that quick fire fashion, if that's possible? Crowdfunding, accelerators, small investors.
Okay, so let me,
because because I mean, there's this trend developing here, which is you kind of go against the grain of what traditional sort of startup advice is, which is why I think you're excellent for this particular episode. It's a completely different, than the YouTube zeitgeist of
Look,
what people reckon right now.
If anyone's going to say to you, there's a manual, I can tell you that's for sure not true. Look, how my father and I did it in Rastislav, we put our money where our mouth is, but we were fortunate enough to have capital. We're also fortunate enough to have some funds behind us. And we have some good friends. And but I would say friends and family. Let's put it that way. The thing that I can say is if you have to go a capital raising route, the most important thing is finding the right investor. If you have to put like a pitch deck out there, or you have to do these types of things, look, if an investor says to you, first of all, give me an elevator pitch. Number one, I'm going to be dead honest because I'm an investor myself and I am an entrepreneur myself. It's actually damn well disrespectful that you don't want to give the person the time to actually explain to you the project. Give them the fair chance. Because number one, most likely the guy that's telling you, give me the elevator pitch, I only have 5 minutes. And if I don't get your product in 5 minutes, I'm sorry, immersive tech and disruptive tech cannot have 5 minutes. Be respectful towards the guy that's actually come up with it, or a girl, or individual. I don't know how to name these people. But let's say at the end of the day, an individual that's going to tell you, give me the elevator pitch is already looking at the exit strategy. And that's what you got to be careful of. The real investor who wants to spend the time with you and wants to understand your technology is the individual that you actually want on board, because this is kind of like smart money. And this is like the type of investor that you want to get, is that they will grow with you. They will open up doors for you. They will they don't just bring money. And I'm going to tell you, in the investment industry, it's a unicorn. It's a unicorn to find them. It's hard to find smart money. Personally, I can say very few people we sat with have brought smart money. But we are very fortunate with the investors that we do have, is that it is smart money.
Are there certain competences that you would qualify, or like a rule or something where you say, okay, this is for us smart money. This is how we look at smart money. Because our listeners, they're probably first time founders. Or maybe not, but they're like, okay, bootstrap maybe. Yeah. Now they're gonna go raise. Like, what is smart money? Like, what does Ockert think smart money is?
Well, smart money, to be honest with you, is someone that will bring something more than just money. This means either a use case, or open up a door, or have certain connections, or be able to contribute. Contributing not just in money, but maybe perhaps in experience, or maybe perhaps in knowledge, or in a specific use case, or in a specific industry. It's someone that comes with knowledge, and someone that's willing to participate in helping the company grow. Smart money is basically about growth. It's about taking an investment, and this individual stipulates, listen, I'm going to help you, not to control you, but to help you succeed in the goal. Buying into the goal and saying, I want to be part of it to make the difference of what you are doing and bringing it into the world. That is the important thing. That's actually smart money. Smart money is not someone that comes in and says, well, you're doing your business wrong. We need to fire the CEO. We need to do this. We need to change that, this, that, blah, blah, blah. This team member is not good. No, that's not smart money, because you as the founder know exactly what your business is and what the strengths are and what the weaknesses are. And smart money can actually help you to strengthen the weaknesses and build further on the strong points that you already have. I hope that
Nice.
answers it.
No, that definitely answers it.
By the way, when it comes to like, crowdfunding, crowdfunding is awesome. But a word of advice to anyone that's doing crowdfunding, make sure that the product or service that you're offering can basically, it can sustain and maintain its value. Because if you're offering something that cannot sustain itself and cannot maintain itself and cannot be lasting, and it will not bring any value. So you will have a very bad experience in crowdfunding. It is a very, very difficult thing to do. And what I can say is if you don't have enough supply and demand, or let's say enough demand to bring that value, then of course, that's exactly where the failure will come in crowdfunding. So be very meticulous when you're doing crowdfunding to make sure that it's something that can, if you're going to provide a service and there's a token for it, so let's say a utility token, which is the only way that I would say you can probably do crowdfunding, that you have enough services that they can utilize it, that you can actually exchange it for or do something with it. Because otherwise you don't really bring any value in crowdfunding. You're just taking the money to develop a product, but it doesn't have any utility or return for the individual that is participating in the crowdfunding.
Okay, moving on. Solving problems like a pro. Target real issues your customer face, the goal, and make your technology as indispensable as coffee on a Monday morning.
I like this one a lot, by the way. and I'll tell you why, Ockert, because our last episode that we shot, Charlie, where it was a great episode, but it was like product least important things on the wish list of this individual, which was he comes from a VC, and I think he's actually one of the better VC players out there, or at least in the Bitcoin space. But my product heart was bleeding a little bit. So, reading this or hearing this, I'm like, oh, man, I'm so happy to sit here right now. And I will say this out loud, Charlie.
No, it was funny because Thomas visibly melted when he said, yep, product is the last thing you need to think about when you're raising money.
Well, yeah, it is the last thing, but I would say it's also the first thing that comes into play, True. Because what is the service offering that you're actually getting when you're doing crowdfunding? Okay, well, solving problems like a pro. When you want to take on a challenge, or when you want to start a business, or when you want to do something, this is really, if you really want to be successful, you got to make people dependable on it. That's why I kind of like said, as indispensable as coffee on a Monday morning, because that's the first thing that I really need on a Monday morning. So, but what I can say is if you create a natural need for the product itself, that is when you've successfully actually succeeded. And these are the types of things, finding challenges in the market. Sometimes there are challenges that you don't even know was a challenge, or some people don't even think it was a challenge. And when you bring in new tech, which is immersive, disruptive, and these types of things, once they start getting used to it, it's extremely hard to bring it in the beginning, because it's something new. They got to get used to this new thing. It's got a new process. I'll give you a simple example. So you start off with two-factor authentication. Let's go down that route. The terrible Google or Twilio application that you got to download, and then you got to try and get it in time, and you got to look at the number, remember it, okay, put it in, and or it's an email that comes in, and now you first got to freaking open up another tab or your email, or you got to check on your phone and find the email, read it, okay, then put it in, or the SMS. Hate that. But at the end of the day, when we brought in Core Pass, you have to create a wallet. You have to remember the seed phrase. you have a pass key that you need to put in, which is actually your 25th word of the seed phrase. It forms part of it, which is part of the encryption. It was a whole new process that you actually needed to go through, but you only need to do it once. So if it's a once-off experience, and if you make the experience okay, not too difficult, then it will actually start adopting. But now, once you've created it, a login is simply open up the phone, scan a QR code, and Bob's your uncle. You're done. You don't need to worry. You don't need to remember a username. You don't need to remember a password. You don't need to do anything. I mean, what was the worst part about remembering a password? So you forget your password, and then sometimes you don't even remember the damn username. So now you go in. So then you try and put in your password, and then it's like, okay, no, this is not working. Okay, so forgot password. Get the email link. Okay, click on the email link. Then it opens up the new tab. Okay, back into it. Then you put in the password, and then it says, well, you can't use the same password as before. And it's like, what do you mean? I just put that password in, of course. and then you got to think of another password. And, I like to look at sometimes of these comedians. I think it is Michael McIntyre, or I don't remember, or what his surname is. He's a brilliant UK comedian. He was talking exactly about this, about the password. And then it's like, so everyone put in the number 1, when you had to add in an alphanumeric character. And then it was, okay, now you got to put in a special character. Exclamation mark, So these are the kinds of things, that you had to go through. But when that tech came in, everyone was like, now I got to download an app, and I got to do this, and I got to do that. But now they're used to it, and they said, well, I can't be without this because this secures my account.
Exactly.
Well, we've done exactly that. You only have one difficult part, which is the onboarding part. But once you're onboarded, everything else is seamless. It's just a scan of a QR code. You don't need to remember passwords or anything like this. And your account is entirely protected by blockchain. And these are the types of things you become so used to it. For me, I wish every single login is now like that, because I love it. I just literally open up the app, boop, scan it, and I'm in my profile. I've got everything. I don't need to worry about nothing. And it's seamless. It's like instant. And these are the types of things that I'm referring to here, is that you solve a problem without people knowing there was a problem, but actually understanding that it has made their life easier. This is the important thing, is making their life actually easier.
Yeah, it's like it's the best disruption, right? If people are like, oh yeah, this is great, like, oh, this is a good, easy service. Like, I always say this with streaming services. Like, I have a lot of issues with streaming services, which we don't want to go in right now. But interestingly, Netflix, everybody's always like, oh, Netflix, this and that, blah, blah. Until you look at the other streaming services who are complete garbage. You're like, oh, like, they solve problems like a pro. Like, you don't realize it until you stand next to something. You're like, oh shit, this is garbage. Like, this is really, really bad. Looking at you, Amazon Video. So, but that's the point, right? Like, they're so good at solving this, you're just like, oh my god, this is what it should be. This is what the standard should be, and then you can't really go back. That's a perfect adoption perspective.
Yeah, that's exactly it, and that's why I say solve the problem like a pro.
Solve the problem like a pro. All right. So when you're trying to solve that problem, you're trying to get product market fit. Roll out the MVP.
Yeah.
Keep it simple.
So MVP should be your first product should be very simple. Get something out there. Prove it. Prove that you can do it. Anything from there on is new versions, further things. So most important is because, sometimes as entrepreneurs, we can get carried away with, but this feature, and we should add this feature, and we should do this feature, and we should do... No. First, what you got to do, step back from the wall, step back from all the... I know features are sexy. They are. Really, look, there's some features that just... That sexiness or that sex appeal that feature brings, I mean, it just makes it so much more attractive. But then you got to actually think about it. Does it help the functionality, or is it only a sales gimmick? And you got to start defining. So your first product has got to be your basic fundamental features. elaborate from there on, because the rest are, the functions should be your basic functions, and then features come on top of that. And this is the important part, is distinguish then which features is the most important and crucial that will help you in your first release if you have to have additional features. But proving the functionality, that's the most important. And then you can start working back with feedback and other things that you actually get. But yeah, don't go crazy with and overboard with all the features. I mean, I look at some of our mind maps of products that we roll out. If you have a look at the Core Pass right now, first thing that we started off with digital identity, being able to KYC your digital document, having a wallet, and being able to digitize your proof of address and your contact information. That's it.
Yeah.
And then being able to transmit this data. That's it. That's the first basic fundamental function that we have on a peer-to-peer basis. Now we've proven that this tech works, and it works seamless with the login. And the login is the sexy part to it. That was an additional sexy feature. So, but that was the sales feature, which actually brought everything into play. And this is exactly the type of things that you need to look before you're delivering a product, is don't try and put in too much.
Yep. Don't go fancy on your login.
Yeah.
You're just trying to prove that, like we always say this in the happy path, right? Like if you're doing an MVP, you're one like USP, right? Like that selling piece that you dream about, you're passionate about, is something different. Do it good, do it right. Like the rest of the features they're great, but as you said, I love that. Like the sales gimmicky, they're gimmicky. You don't need them.
Yeah.
But to your point, like in the case of a DID login, very important, right? Yeah. Like that is because that's the onboarding step that won't go away.
That gives the digital identity a use case.
Exactly.
That's the important part. So this is if the feature doesn't give it a use case,
why implement it?
Exactly. Not in your first release. Release something that just proves the point.
Yep. 80% of the what is it? Of 100% of the features that we built, like 20% is actually being used. Kind of thing. Keep that in mind. Yeah.
Yeah.
So staying lean and agile.
You got to be flexible. So the most important thing is you shouldn't be too solidly structured in your or your foundation shouldn't be just this is the foundation. You should be able to expand the foundation. You should be able to derive from a path when you first say, okay, right, this is the path that we're going to go, but then be able to alter it a little bit and be flexible in what you're doing. Because the important part is as emerging tech, I mean, today's day and age, when you have a look at technology, when we started 11 years back to where we are now, some of these products have changed entirely. 180 degrees. And we've had to change a lot of architecture sometimes. Sometimes you're developing in architecture and you're stuck in this architecture and something new pops out or someone finds something new and it can change a lot in your architecture. Be open to be able to adapt yourself and be flexible enough to move it. This is the most important. Don't get attached to things. In an entrepreneurial environment, you can't be attached. You've got to be able to move yourself in different directions, steer yourself in the way of which will be a much better solution to what you currently have.
It comes back to your previous point, right? Don't fall in love with your product.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Rosy glasses.
rosy glass. Like, be passionate, but don't fall in love. I mean.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. So towards validating the product, feedback is your new bestie.
Yeah. I like how you're reading
the feedback on this. Do you like personally call every person that's tried it out? Like, what's the best way?
So before we leave, okay, so you have two options. So your first option is you can release a product without having done open testing and then get feedback from that. You got to listen to the compliments, which are great, but then you get what is called tough love. the critiques. So sometimes I can say there's, of course, there's a lot of people that give you a lot of criticism because they think they know better how to do certain things. But you got to sift through those, and you got to make sure that you amicably, kind of like take what is relevant towards the criticism. My suggestion to product releases, we did, for example, with a company called Hacktraphy, we did a 1.5 year open testing, offered bounties if you could find bugs, if you could hack the platform, and offered generous bounties. There you actually often get a lot of feedback, a lot of interesting things that they find. Look, you can have the best Q&A testers, and you can test as much as you want and think that you know exactly how people are using it. Sometimes I wonder how people can get certain bugs that you find in the application. I mean, it's like they have 20 fingers on one hand. So specifically in a mobile app. But if you think that you're going to find all the bugs, you're not going to do them. And if you do it in open testing where you're offering rewards and you offer things like for example, we did two things. We offered the bounty, where if you found a bug, like spelling mistakes wasn't really counted as a bug. Here and there, we offered one when it was really bad. But mostly it was like functionality bounties, which we gave. So if you came up with an issue of data transfer, or if you came up with an issue of something, and no one was able in the 1.5 years, and I mean, we had over 10,000 hackers that actually came in. We even, Liam will tell you this, I mean, we even basically said it directly on his podcast. I said, well, come on then. Give it your best shot.
Wow, that's
bold. Hackers. So that was one of the things that he loved about us. I remember that very clearly. But this is basically, we kind of like challenged the hacker community, and we said, well, go on, try. See if you can penetrate it. The interesting thing that I can tell you is that apart from that specific thing, you should also offer something like we did the early adopter NFT, where we offered a type of like an airdrop and an NFT that comes with it that of course will have a lot of meaning in the future of actually participating, because that's how you give thanks to your community that's actually participating in testing the application itself. Yep. So feedback, getting this type of feedback is invaluable for your product. You have to get that feedback, because that can only result in one thing: bettering the product. And sometimes you find hidden gems in the feedback that actually says, hey, we didn't think of that. That might be a cool option, and derive something on it, and it'll become a feature.
Ooh.
I mean, I just want to continue on this line, because I think it's really, really useful. When you have, so I think this is something that's just massively important for any new product or any new founder. When let's say you're thinking about launching a token, you've got a piece of technology, you're saying offer bounties. How else can they start generating a buzz? Or in your experience, how else have you kind of gone from sort of 0 to 1 in terms of launching it, getting in front of people?
Well, that's one of the toughest challenges. That actually comes to, networking. Trying to, and basically coming into social media play, being on the right channels, going to conferences, doing certain things, networking, shaking hands, meeting people, create content like a good talk show. So leaving them coming back for more, like this talk show. So what is very important is, when we started off, we had some friends. The friends then started spreading word of mouth. Those friends started spreading a little bit more, and then we started seeing the need. Okay, right, we gotta go to the internet. So we built the website, and then we created a YouTube channel. Then we started creating YouTube videos. So like I said right in the beginning, your first YouTube videos versus what they are now, I mean, can vastly differ. But what I can say is get the message out there and put it everywhere where you possibly can. And regardless if someone's going to critique you on it or not, be proud of it. Because I tell you what, the person that's critiquing you, guys, you as the startup owners and as the founders, the guy that's critiquing you probably hasn't done it before. And they might give you valuable critique. That's why I say sift it. So don't push it to the side. Take it. And they're entitled to their opinion. And sometimes it's good opinions, sometimes it's bad opinions. But, take it with grace, remain professional. And at the end of the day, continue on getting your word out. The more word that you spread, the more word of mouth comes in. Word of mouth is the best marketing actually for a project, which is, hey, listen, have you heard about this? It's kind of like someone saying, I give my stamp of approval to it. And this is the important part for it. And, try and get on podcasts, try and get on social, get social media influencers, but be careful of the social media influencers that you approach. Sometimes they might not be good for the project and they might not have the target market that you have. So make sure that you research those, get social media specialists that can actually understand how to investigate whether a channel is a real channel, whether they have real individuals, whether it's not bots and things like this. This is the biggest problem that you have with X and with YouTube and all these types of things is they have fake accounts which are following them and fake bots, Instagram, all of them. Actually, by the way, this is what CorePass solves. Just FYI. Not that I'm trying to do a product placement there, but what I can say is these are the important aspects is getting that word out there. And it is damn well challenging. I can tell you that's probably one of the hardest leaps that you have is to get known in the market. Get trusted people to be, following you or to promote you, or not just to promote you, but also to participate. And I'm not saying just do it on a paid version. The best version is if you convince them because your tech is that great. That's the important part.
Courage over caution. I mean, I just feel like it racks up quite nicely because you kind of have to be a bit balls out when you're going to talk about your product. Be like, yeah, come at me, break it, play with it, see what happens.
I'm going to tell you, having a startup and building something disruptive, you get a battering, hey? you get beaten up sometimes, and even once you've released it and things like this, there are days that you just get home and it's like, man, I feel like the dog that's wounded that got kicked even further. And sometimes you got to just sit down and just drink a whiskey and kind of like reflect on the day. There's some days that you just don't want to talk. My poor wife, I have to say, I love her dearly. She's absolutely fantastic. She picks me up when I'm down and she brings me down when I'm high.
Nice balance.
Yeah. So, and when I mean high, I don't mean like high. I mean like when I'm on my peak, I'm excited about something. But the thing I can say is you really have to have courage. Courage is an extremely important thing when you're doing this. And that's why I say live, eat, and breathe the product. Because if you don't live, eat, and breathe it, you can't have the courage to actually do it because you got to believe in it yourself. If you don't believe in your own product, you're not going to get anywhere. And to believe in something, it takes courage. And then to say, okay, right, well, I'm going to do this takes a hell of a lot of courage to say, I'm going to step out on my own and I'm going to do it. The thing is just do it. Don't think about all the reasons on why not to. If you believe in it and you say, I think this will work, go for it. Give it a shot. Don't let anything. That's how the best tech stories and tech companies come. Is just say, one day we sat, had a beer, 3 mates, and before you know it, voila, there you go. Something came from it, and it's now conglomerates. These are how these companies actually started, underneath a garage light or in a bar where they sat and had a conversation.
Actually, I wanted just to hook in on that. What is great, we had now quite some guests on the show. Almost every one of them says something similar. It's like, go do it. Like, don't just, get your energy behind it. And I think what you're saying here, it's super important. It's like live and breathe it. Just, you got to be passionate. You can't if you come in this game with just like to make the money, you'll be out very quickly and and like you'll be kicked down. You won't get up. But if you breathe it, if you're passionate, it will push you back up.
Yeah, exactly.
Now to flip the script on that, patience is your secret weapon.
Well, to build something that is, you don't want to build something and it's just okay. You want to build something and it's great. It's fantastic. I like to refer to someone like Elon Musk. He says, if you want to bring a product into the market, which is similar to another product, it can't just be the same. It's got to be different. It's got to be better, but it can't just be a little bit better. It's got to be way better. It's got to be different. It's got to make a huge impact, because then it will be successful. I don't tend to always agree with that, because if you have a look at, for example, Netflix, as the example that you made, Netflix and Amazon Prime, then the thing that I can say, and the worst part is my favorite show is on there. The Grand Tour. Love that show. I really love that show. That's my guilty pleasure when I ever get time to watch it. I still haven't watched the last one that was released, and I'm like dying for it. But
you know why they called it the Grand Tour?
No, actually, I don't.
Because you got to push through the UI UX, and it's a Grand Tour.
No. No. TGT, Top Gear 2.
Yeah. That is so good.
They are so clever. Good. Yeah. I love them for that.
Yeah, that is brilliant. Look, I love those guys. But this is exactly the thing is Netflix streaming isn't just better. It's amazing. But you don't really understand it until you've experienced it. Yeah. And this is the type of thing that you gotta look at. It might be the same product that they're offering, but it's got a certain pizzazz to it. I think Netflix's UI is better. I think their experience is better. And these are the things that actually make the difference.
No advertisements in the shows.
Yeah, exactly. And this is the important thing that I can say. To get to that position, it takes patience. Patience is really an important aspect when you're starting. You can't just say, I'm going to release this right now. Okay, we're going to do a woman a cuff and that's it, and we're going to release it and that's it, and we'll fight the battle if we have hiccups. No. Because the worst part that you actually have is when you finish the development, or you've come to a certain stage where the application is in a stable kind of like position, but there's still some development that needs to take place. Start testing. Testing is what's the patience. 1.5 years we had to test Core Pass before we actually released it. And it was several updates that we did. And we were like, okay, we'll give you 3 months. And the team lead said, no, you're going to give me 6 months minimum. And I said, no, we'll do 3 months. I think we can do the testing. No, 6 months. So this was one of the arguments that we had. And in the end, he gave me the compelling answer. And I said, okay, right, 6 months it is. Now, of course, you have to understand, these types of delays have a cost effect. A huge cost effect because you've got a huge team with other projects that are still busy developing, and at the same time, you've got to fund that. So because your product is not out yet and doesn't bring any income or anything like this. So, but you know what? That patience paid off. Because when we released the application, we had thousands of people already testing the application, and they were constantly testing it because we kept on giving them new tasks and releasing new parts and little updates and things like this as it was ready for us to get into the testing environment. And that's actually where you build a community of trust. That's the important part of doing this, because that patience actually built our community in trust because they actually felt part of it. And that is the most important thing is your community is what's going to utilize your application. And if they're partaking in the beginning early stages of it, they become part of it. They grow attached to it. And that's where word of mouth and spreading and all this type of, things that you really want of natural occurrences that happens with your product going viral. That's exactly the type of viralness that you want. And that only happened because of patience, because we sat it through. And after the 6 months of testing, we found bugs. We did. And we said, okay, right, we got to fix that. And then we fixed it. And then we got to do another 2 months of testing because they're not sitting there eagerly awaiting to test it. It takes them 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Then it's like, okay, there's an update. Okay, I'll download the update. And they download the update. And it's like, okay, don't get any feedback, nothing. Okay, you sit and wait. Oh, okay, here comes the feedback. Then all of a sudden it just swarms in because the one guy posts on the social media, oh, I just found this bug. Everyone's going to go and try and do it so that they can try and see if they can win the bounty. Who reports it first?
Beautiful.
So, yeah, that's the patience thing. And, patience is key. It is.
To finish the section off, rainy days.
Oh. Like I said, when you get home and you're tired or something didn't go or you found out of a delay or an infrastructure problem or there was a huge bug or you just had a damn well difficult day. Sometimes it's even phases. It's not just one day. You can have downs where you got to solve problems, you got to do things, and you don't know how to yet. Now, my favorite thing is Tom Hanks. This is something that I will always take with me because ever since I saw that video and ever since I learned about it, I wish I knew it even earlier. But it is, this too shall pass. So when you're high and you're on top of the world and everything's fantastic, that stage will pass. When you're low and all the things, that too shall pass because you'll get through it if you keep on pushing through with your perseverance, because perseverance is what makes a startup work. You got to keep on keeping on. And that's where, time is your ally. And in the end, just wait it out. Don't react emotionally. Don't, even if you get a great email or if you're in a meeting, even with a VC or something like this, keeping yourself constrained and content will be better for you than to show your emotion. Because you don't want to act emotionally. You don't want to react or do anything that is emotional. And this is the most important thing, is you have to wait that out, and you have to just remain calm, cool, and collected. And at the end of the day, that this too shall pass, that will take you much further than what you know, because you will sometimes need to always remember that, because, it is sometimes really difficult, guys. Sometimes you ask yourself the question, is this really damn well worth it? Am I really doing the right thing here?
Yeah, we've been there.
Oh, hell yeah.
It's just worth it.
Is it worth it? But you know what? Then you have to always reflect. What has it taught you? money can't buy the experiences that I've had, the fun I've had, the joy I've had, the downs I've had. And the downs is what also builds character. It builds the business. It makes you remember. It makes a team stronger. If you're in downtime and you can stick together and stand together, guys, that's what builds a team. That's what brings the team character, because there becomes a camaraderie. Okay, sorry, for lack of a better word, we're in this shit together. And that's it. And you got to see it through. And I'm sorry if I offended anyone with my rude word, but this is really important. Like, if you are stuck in the mud and you guys are tugging together to get out, it's better to be together than what you're one man alone.
I used to run with a team a couple of years ago, and I always a couple of really tough projects in the blockchain space. And they always said, Thomas, it doesn't matter what you do after this, you bled with us. So, but that camaraderie, that piece, like as you said, like it builds character, right? Like,
yeah,
the deeper you go, if you're able to stay together, build something out of it, and sometimes it means it's a pivot, right? Like you realize, shit, we need to do something different.
Yeah.
But very often, as you said, like it builds more passion. It builds more camaraderie, better teamwork, better management, better features.
Optimization.
Optimize. Yeah. But you got to go through it. You got to push. You got to.
Yeah. I mean, any tech startup that says to me that they haven't gone through difficult days,
you'll get there.
Come join the club. It's fun.
You're sitting still in like the honeymoon. Okay, that's cool. You just raised money and didn't have any issues yet. Great.
Oh, and when the investors come knocking, where are we on this? An update, please. You have to explain.
What update? What are you talking about?
We're still busy.
Yeah, we just bought a Ferrari.
Oh, that's one thing. Never overspend. Please don't spend things on unnecessary things. Optimize your cash flow. Freaking hell. This is the most important thing. Don't buy tech that you don't need. Don't invest into smaller things with capital that you know you might be able to put away and store for later that could help you in the rainy days. That's like key to it. If you raise capital, spend the capital of what it was raised for. Don't go and spend it on unnecessary things. Turn every dime twice. Make sure you turn it over and over and over before you spend it.
I will say this. I think that me as CEO should definitely drive Ferrari, and I think it's important for the business. But no, but seriously, this is like, I'm joking about this, but I have had founders that I worked with that then posted on social media that they just bought a new Ferrari, and we were like, wait, you wanted to have terms on your payment, and you just bought a Ferrari. Like, okay, interesting. But this is I never overspend. I think it's a general rule in life, right? Don't spend money you don't have.
Yeah. Try and be debt free. Yeah. Sorry.
This is a shocker coming from the Dutch guy.
I will tell you right now, and there's a lot of.
I'm shocked you commented on that piece, mate. Me and the rest of the audience.
I am probably, and I will tell you this: I am the least Dutch guy. Probably not in the world, but I'm a lot less Dutch than most of you people think. And trust me, fight me on this in the comments. But I will tell you that I'm not using certain apps that we use in the Netherlands to settle bills, because I think it's bullshit. I too have issues with payment providers. Anyway.
Oh, by the way, I just want to tell you, I drive a Toyota Hilux, an old one.
Hell yeah. I will say I drive nothing because I don't have a car. So, occasional expensive train, but it's like the train is expensive, not the ticket, right? Like, just.
I do. Again, this sparked an interesting question with respect to salaries and let's say you're bootstrapping. And like, I don't know. I mean, I've seen we're all plugged into the ecosystem. There are senior devs asking for 150 grand plus salaries. There's some serious money going around the blockchain space for established engineers, PR people, BD people. Everyone's really commanding quite a high salary. Do you think it's worth it? Do you work out some sort of token deal? What would you advise to get top tier talent for people who are building that vision?
Top tier talent isn't in the place where you think it is.
Ooh, that's a good one.
I'll tell you straight. I think, no offense, guys, and this is my humble opinion, I think there's a lot of people that's overpaid for an ego versus the talent and versus the skills that they can bring. What I can say to you, we are extremely fortunate to have the team that we have. And we don't pay small salaries, but you got to make sure that you earn that salary. That's the important thing. And it's not us that does the measurement. It's the team leads that makes the measurement, because they basically know it's their budget that they're spending. And this is the important thing is many people have come to join the team, took a pay cut, took less than what they can get in the market. But that's because they don't just do it for a job and just for money. They do it because of the culture and because of the team and because what they believe in. What I can say is offer your developers, once they've proven themselves, or your team, not just your developers, but your entire team. Once they've proven themselves over a consecutive time, make sure that you put a plan in to make them more part of the company. Because that's the important thing. The more a part they become, the more at home they will feel. And I can tell you, I don't look in your normal places for developers. I look for developers in places, and for team members in places where they understand the struggle. And you'll be kind of like amazed at the amount of talent which is untapped, which you can find in certain places. It's astonishing of how creative they can be in technology. And this is what makes it so fantastic and makes it feasible for us to do it. And we don't care about your jurisdiction. We don't care about your ethnicity. We don't care about, we're a multicultural society. And if you've got the skills, we're willing to listen and we're willing to pay for them. And we'll pay what they're worth. And I don't mean I'm going to skimp on a payment. We are generous, and bonuses are important. Raises are important. Milestones, set milestones. Those achievements can actually, we're not the best at corporate events. I'll say that. We've tried to establish one, but it's really hard. And with most of our team being remote. But what I can say is the team members that are close by, team leads have arranged their own get-togethers and things like this, which we've paid for. And we've done some of our own corporate events and things like this. We're still looking to do a whole full corporate event, but everyone needs to go to one place. So we're trying to see where the best place is. But the most important part is have several milestones for yourself in the company, which is specifically aimed at your team, you as the founder. And, I always say, I don't want to have everything of nothing. I'd rather have a little of something. So this is the important part. And, I really am going to go back to this, and I'm going to say, you cannot find the type of talent in the places that you think.
I can agree on that.
Where are the places?
I'm actually curious if your places and my places are different.
Well, I won't say that, but what I can say is I won't say where it is or these types of things, but we probably have from everywhere in the world people, but they come not from major cities or major places or things like this, and it's really strange how we get to them. It is really, sometimes it's like it's like a kind of story that you'll sit and you'll think, how the hell did we get this guy?
Mm-hmm.
And he's absolutely brilliant. How did no one else find him or her? Sorry, I'm talking about a guy, but also her. I mean, we've got amazing girls in the team, absolutely phenomenal of the things that they can do, and it's all because of their experience. It's all because of the things that they do.
I would add something to that actually. As I'm running with a lot of development teams here in Poland and I would say Central Europe, which is in on itself a super interesting culture, development culture. And obviously, like, you know that since living in Slovakia a little bit, I found that if you offer the right motivation, the right leadership, the right values,
Mm-hmm.
Good becomes great.
Yeah.
And average becomes good.
Yeah.
And I think that is, and I always say this, like our teams are generally consisting of, like I have a research team consisting of PhD. They're absolute ballers, like shameless plug, absolute ballers. Like they have a very similar perspective on technology as you do yourself. But we mix those great senior talents with, you know, meteor engineers that in experience, that, and then they go with the right leadership, and you know they're great leaders from great, like to good to great. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that is actually how you find people, and it has a lot to do with what you kind of, you know, show the world on how you are, what kind of company you are, and why it works as it works. I think that's how sometimes, at least in my opinion, you'll find the right people for the right company that you are. And I'll explain that really short, because like as you Ockert, like I think if engineers are listening to this, I am an ex-project manager. I would say, well, Ockert, hey, you're looking for another project manager, because it's a very compelling message, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I can imagine that somebody that is an engineer for the money, and I know them, and they're great engineers, they'll probably say, yeah, that's too much work. I want to make a lot of money, and I'll make it worth it. But what Ockert says, I'm not so sure, because it's not necessarily the message that they're looking for. And I think when you look for talent, and that goes, I think, in every branch, but my branch is development, you look for people that speak your language, your specific company, like your community language, your however your tribe, whatever you want to call it. Like that's where they get leveled, they get passionate,
Mm-hmm.
and now that good engineer is now a great engineer, right?
You see, the important thing what I want to say is like, for example, it depends on where your company is based. When you have a look at certain salaries which are being paid in certain countries, I think it is absolutely exorbitant, and I cannot believe how the hell they can actually pay such salaries. But I'm also saying in the regions where we are, we pay above standard, actually quite high above standard. But what I agree with you 100%. You know, if I sometimes, you know, or not just me, but even our team leads, they sometimes rather look at the passion of the individual and the character of the individual. They might not have the skills, but skills you can learn. If you've got the right attitude, you can come in and you can learn and you can grow that individual into something spectacular. That is exactly 100% on par and cue. I could not have said that better. And what I can say is, you know, there's being mediocre in skills, but being creative in problem solving is also a very important thing. And you can be a top-notch developer, but I can tell you what, you can sometimes learn from the mediocre.
I just wanted to mention that, like, being a rockstar engineer doesn't guarantee that you're
Yeah.
like, well, being a rockstar developer doesn't mean you're a great engineer.
Yeah.
It actually means generally you're a mediocre engineer because there's a lot of ego involved. And once, like throughout, I think that the red thread in this whole discussion has been what I find interesting, like also from you personally, like the amount of ego is incredibly low. I mean, you need to, I think, if you want to be successful. But that goes also for your team. If you become like, if you hire people with a big ego, like, and in this case, rockstar engineers, massive issue. You get mediocre teammates. Or you can get. I'm not saying like for all the rockstar engineers out here, like I'm not trying to.
They're amazing guys.
They're amazing. And some of them, and maybe most of them are great, but there is also a good amount that doesn't have the skills to be a great engineer.
Hiring and these types of activities that you have to do as a startup, it's sometimes really difficult, and sometimes it's really hard to find the right person. But what I can say is we have some real rock stars in the team, and they cost. But what I can say is they've earned it. Yep. And it's not about from what they did in the past. It's from what they've already achieved now, current. And that's why you get these individuals in. If you're going to keep on living off what you've accomplished in the past as a developer, and you're not focused on the future, that's when you should probably change your attitude. Because it's not going to get you to where you want to be, because you can actually be a lot bigger and a lot greater than trying to delve just on, okay, well, I was part of this team and I did this particular thing and it's successful. Okay, so what have you done now recent?
Wait, you're telling me that if I put ex-Google in my LinkedIn, that's not valuable?
I don't look at a CV. I'll tell you straight. I look at what you can do, and I look at your character. Of course, our team leads look at the CVs and they look at certain other things. Me personally, when Rastislav and I were hiring, I used to tell our HR department, they used to get the CVs, they used to go through the CVs and things like this. And they used to want to put the CV in front of me. Should we interview? Should we not? And I said, just interview. And we gave almost everyone a chance that came in. It was only when it was like really not where we think. But what I can say is I really don't actually care whether you have an education or what you've done in the past. I care about what you can do right now. I care about also your character and your ability to be able to work in a team and be able to understand a company culture. These are the things that I think is more important, because your skills, we can always teach you skills. This is also one thing which is quite important to say to startups. In the beginning, it's easy to hire people. Once you get to a certain stage, it gets extremely difficult. And then you have to understand that it can take anything between 3 to 6 months before that individual is useful or is profitable. When I mean useful, I don't mean useful, I mean like profitable. Because they need to learn, they need to understand the repositories, they need to go through all the code, they need to understand all the documentation, they need to understand how the project's put together, the architecture, they need to understand the deployment, the DevOps section, all the things, how the communicators are working, all these types of different things that they got to look at. Once they've understood that, then they can actually start participating. But it depends on how big and what's the scale of your project and how far you are in the project. And you always need to keep that into account. So now it's like, someone says, oh, well, we can do the project faster if we hire more people. It's going to take at least 3 months before we get the speed going.
This is the 9 months of 9 mothers, 1 month baby discussion. Yeah, no, we've had them.
And this is the important thing as an entrepreneur and as a business startup to understand. As you progress, you're going to get through these challenges and you're going to get to these stages, and it's really interesting stages. Some people are extremely fast in understanding, clicking, and learning, but some people are not, and they are extremely valuable to have. But you got to give them the time, and that's where patience comes in again, because you got to be patient with them to actually understand, so that they can be fully optimized in the skill sets that they're going to bring to the team. And that's the important aspect to it. But everyone matters. It is the important thing of that.
I want to add one more thing, Charlie, and then because I know where you want to go with this. I think that's also the piece with overspending.
Yeah,
it's really easy to get when you're in that stage of startup or kind of scale up. You might feel very often, oh, if I throw more money at the problem, it will solve the problem. Oh. I will guarantee you right now, and I think, Ockert, you can agree on this, it will never solve the problem. To the contrary, it creates so many problems that you might actually look back on that and saying like, oh shit, this has been a company defining moment or changing moment. Mm-hmm. And we've seen companies go bankrupt because of it. Because they were unable to go from that startup phase to a scale-up phase. Because they figured, oh yeah, now we need to deliver 15 features, so we're going to build 15 feature teams. That means 60 people, and we're going to hire them all in 1 month, and this is all going to happen. Nope.
Yeah, that's exactly.
If you've made it this far through the podcast, we really appreciate you doing us a solid. Like, subscribe, hit that notification button, and share with anyone that you think you'd find this useful. Moving on to the brainstorming section of the podcasts, we want to talk about navigating funding and investment for tech startups. And I know we've covered part of this already with respect to finding smart money, which I thought was absolutely fantastic. Oh, yeah. Got to have smart money. But are there any other pieces, any other sort of nuggets we can drop for the audience with respect to different vectors of raising capital?
Yeah. Look, there's always the part where you got to decide whether you're going to do equity funding or debt finance, or equity finance and debt finance. In my humble opinion, I think that debt finance in startups is extremely dangerous unless it is convertible, which means that the debt that you're taking can be converted into either stocks or shares or ownership or equity. Equity finance is always the better option, especially if it is smart money. This brings the value to your business model. If it is not smart money, it's better to take your time before just accepting it. Choose your investors carefully. It's really, really, really important. If the investors do not understand your business, there's only one motivation. That's their exit plan. And I would also say, when you talk about a pitch that you need to make, or, a pitch deck itself, this is kind of like really interesting when you're pitching to investors. We kind of like have a little bit of a standing joke. We usually say two South Africans and a Slovak walk into whatever it is. It sounds like Three Stooges walk into a bar. But what I can say is when you look at pitch decks and when you look at presenting to an investor, the important part about a pitch deck is the pitch deck's not going to get you the money. The pitch deck's not there to get the money. The pitch deck's there to open the door or the invite for you to explain it. And, the most important components of a pitch deck is to define your challenge or problem. Then describe the detailed solution. Really go into depth of how you solve that. And I don't like to call it a problem. I'd like to call it a challenge, because it's merely a challenge. It's not a problem. Problem is something much worse. So rather focus on the way that you're doing your wording and talk about challenges and talk about how you can how you can better the current state of it and get like really into it. The other most important thing that an investor is going to look at is the ask. So be very clear on what you're going to spend the money on. Don't just give out a ballpark figure. Go and sit down and do proper calculations. Really take the cost of the timing that it's going to take you, the amount of people it's going to be. Also include your marketing and these types of things, but don't overestimate and don't try and build in fat, because it will catch you at a later stage, because you'll sell off your equity too much in the beginning stages, which you will regret at a later stage. Try and finance or be creative in the ways that you're doing. Use freebies. Freebies meaning go look at open source projects, go look at alternative ways of doing marketing, find new creative solutions of doing these types of things rather than spending exorbitant budgets on it, because throwing budgets at marketing can eat up the entire budget, and then you won't have enough budget to actually build it of what you want to build. And this is the important part, that you need to make sure that your ask is combed through with a fine comb, and that you can exactly pinpoint the exact amounts and how you calculated it according to that. Because at the end, that's actually what's going to define whether you're responsible or not for them to actually put the investment in. So this is the most important thing, is make sure your pitch deck is good enough to get you the invitation for the meeting, because the right investor will invest in you, not in your pitch deck. Yeah. That's the most important thing.
What you said there is absolutely fantastic, and expanding upon that would be, for me, one of the biggest question marks, especially in the Web3 space, is your go-to-market. Everyone's always saying, I'm gonna launch a token, and then I'm gonna motivate the community with the token. I'm going to airdrop. We've all seen these decks, right?
Wait, that's not a good business model?
And we were talking about being spendthrift, making sure that you're actually deploying capital in a meaningful way and being intentional with the ask. To dissuade the audience from doing the token motivation model, go to market, what qualifies as good in your book?
Look, you've already done the revolutionary thing by going on your own. That's the first step that you took of doing the right thing. The second thing is try and have a little bit of reserve from yourself, or try and find a little bit of capital from yourself, or do something to showcase your passion. The passion is actually what is the secret sauce. That's what truly will get you investment, will get your project somewhere. There's no ABC or XYZ or whatever business model for the exact pitch deck. Every single company is different. Every single project is different. Every challenge is different. Every approach that you're doing is different. And this is the interesting thing around it, is a pitch deck is still old school. It's still, it's still the legacy method of getting funding. Specifically when it's either a VC or whether it's crowdfunding or bootstrapping or whatever. But at the end of the day, the most important thing is you have to, it's the way that you communicate it. You got to bring in the passion. You got to show your heart in it. If your heart's in it, they will know your faith, your trust, your belief, your everything's in it. If you're all in, then they know, okay, you are serious about it. If it is something that's just a predefined ChatGPT text, it's not going to get you where you want it to be. Yes, ChatGPT can polish it and make it a little bit better and things like this, but don't ask ChatGPT to write your pitch deck for you. You got to write it with your heart, your passion, and then you can fix it a little bit with ChatGPT, but then go and re-alter it and re-edit it again, because you got to show your personality in there, because that's what's actually gonna really bring. That's the pizzazz that you bring.
Yeah.
It's not defining it or saying this is the particular slide or this is the particular thing. It's you. You're the one that sells it because you're the one that founded it and you're the one that believes in it. That's the real relevance to a project.
I had a while ago, we do some angel investing on the side. We had an guy, creator economy, ex-Hollywood, great guy to speak to, very articulate. But then his pitch deck was a 4-minute video of him presenting this to a large audience. And I will say this, I was very skeptical, like, yeah, all right, whatever. This is, but he is a ex-videographer, I think, and a very, very good public speaker. So the way how he explained his product, it was incredibly well explained, which is something that I always look for in founders, because being able to translate your product into the market, it's important. But the passion that came from that guy, like, both me and my partner were like, yeah, okay, we got to do some due diligence over him. We got to figure him out further. But okay, this is 90% what he just did, right? Like, and it was, for me, it was 6 minutes, because the personality of him was so strong and it was so clear that, okay, he is gonna drive this. And then we met his team and we're like, okay, now it's done. Like his team was like kind of like brought in a bunch of people, and to the same point that we've talked about earlier, very, very good at delegating and giving people the right responsibilities. But it was that 6-minute pitch of public speaking to actually another group of people that just pulled me in, and it blew my mind. I was like, wow, is this, to your point of traditionally like old school pitch deck, why are we not seeing more video? Because like video kind of brings over that passion, that perspective, and I think you're able to better articulate what your product is, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is me kind of like thinking out loud, but
this is exactly it. And I just want to tell you, if you're going to over design your pitch deck and it just looks absolutely magnificent 99% of the time, you will clearly understand that the marketing has gone, or the money is going into the marketing and not into the technology. That's just something. Don't make your pitch deck look too sexy.
That's an interesting. But is that shared by the market as well? Because I mean, VC land, we all know VC land out there is strange and weird and interesting and fascinating at the same time. But I mean, I think I know VCs that are like, "Ooh, that's a great looking pitch deck." Well, let me think marketing.
Yeah. Well, have you ever seen How I Met Your Mother?
I've never seen How You Met My Mother. No, but I have seen the show. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, well, that particular show, if you have a look at the Barney resume, the video resume, that episode, this is what I'm talking about. Over the top, crazy things, all kinds of stuff. Don't do that. The guy is interested in understanding what's the challenge, understanding how you solve the challenge, what's the ask, and make sure that it's legitimate. And the thing that I can tell you is video is awesome. But you got to have a little bit of substance. I can tell you, I've sat in front of investors, many of them. Some telling me, just give me the elevator pitch. And it's like, by the time that I'm 3 minutes in, to explain this type of technology and the ecosystem that we've built, the guy, when they say to you, give me an elevator pitch, you as a founder can sometimes be thrown off with these types of things, and you stutter and you struggle to find the words to put it together, and it prolongs, and in the end it can create doubt. So, when you're making a video, make sure that you've gone over your video over and over, pre-scripted, make sure it's good, make sure everything's ready, that you are prepared to actually deliver it. But what you say is true and what you say you mean. And having a pitch deck and having a video connected to that pitch deck that can actually either showcase, demonstrate, illustrate, or just showcase a bit of you, that brings that says 10 times more than having a super pizzazzed, over the top type of pitch deck that you're actually throwing out there. Keep it simple. That is the most important thing, is keep it simple, keep it in layman's terms, and just all the other things that you're putting together of the technology and these types of things, that's waffle. The three slides that they look at is the challenge, solution, and your ask. That's it. That's really when it's the first thing that I go to is I first go and have a look at the ask, and then I go and have a look at the challenge. And then I say, okay, right, well, how can this challenge cost that much to actually produce? Okay, now I want to look at how the solution works. And then I work my way backwards in a pitch deck before I will invest into a project. This is how I approach it. And having an understanding of how much development costs, or how much it costs to actually roll out a certain project, what you got to look at. The other thing that is very important is to make sure that your architecture is good, because if you don't have a good architecture for your scale up, you're going to have a failing domino effect. You want the perfect domino effect, and you've got to actually showcase that of how do you, in your solution, it's important to showcase your scalability inside of it, because that's going to say, okay, right, you've really thought of the rudimentaries, which is the most important aspect. Is if I've rolled out and I need to scale up and this thing goes crazy, you got to be ready for it. And if you're not ready for it in your infrastructure, how will you be able to cope? You can't let the product go down. No, because it's got to maintain. You'll lose trust and all these types of things. And most important, be honest. Be straight, honest, transparent, and real. That's the most important thing.
I have nothing to add there. I would say hell yeah to the infrastructure piece. Seriously. Once again, Charlie and I have had this discussion over the last year over and over again. People are not willing to spend what they should spend on the right things. And infrastructure, in my opinion, like scaling up, having your architecture documentation ready, knowing what's going to happen in the next 6 to 12 months, and not building some low code, no code crap, and not understanding that can only get you till X, Y, and Z. I mean, yeah, it's
the worst thing for me is when someone says, okay, give me your 5-year plan. How the hell am I supposed to know what my 5-year plan? It's going to be that's what it's going to be. It's going to be a thumb suck, because I can't tell you how fast the users are going to come on, how quick the adoption will be. No one can tell you that. If you think in the tech industry, in the blockchain industry, that you know that already, the only thing you can stick to is your hard facts. You can't say how fast your product will grow. And this is also one of the things. This is why I say keep it real. Don't overextend the amount of time. Keep your cost calculations according to a specific time frame. You can always go back and go and collect more money once you've reached that time frame, but don't overestimate it and don't underestimate it. That's also the other thing. Don't sell yourself short.
Cool. I've got nothing else to add.
No, I mean, I can. No, I just like I'm gonna put this on the forefront of my company. It's just like, look, these 5 minutes. If you go through this and you still want to do this, come talk to me.
So I do a bit of mentorship as well. Whenever I look at a deck, I want to see something special in this is why I asked about go-to-market, something that positioning is what I specialize in. And I want to see something unique. I want to see something special. I want to see a reason why, and a reason, and like some form of multiplier that's going to get you into the market quicker and faster, and your product in front of people more than your standard sort of token motivation launch kind of thing. I feel you come from the school of, if the problem's big enough and the tech's good enough and it solves the problem quick enough. Is that a correct assumption? I mean, you're just asking. I'm curious.
No, actually, I come from in my humble opinion, tech doesn't need to be big to actually solve a problem that we didn't know we have. It can be the smallest little thing that could actually go viral. Silly little application that no one thought they ever needed. TikTok. I hate TikTok. I don't use TikTok at all. But if you look how that boomed, because of short reels, because everyone just keeps on scrolling on the short reels. The attention span is less. They just want to get to the point. Okay, that's it. In, out, in, out, in, out. That's it. That's why TikTok boomed. Only because of that, because it was short reels. It wasn't long, lengthy videos. If you want to watch more of the video, yes, then you can continue. But it's all short reels. And this is kind of like the thing now. I can tell you now, people are just like, do you have TikTok? And I personally, I don't have TikTok. I'm not a fan of it. I don't want to have it. I'm an old school guy. I'm still Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Actually, my favorite is LinkedIn, and I loved Twitter. Elon, change it back to Twitter. I don't like X because I'm not going to give you an X post. I like to give a tweet. I still talk about tweet. That's the era where I came from, but to tell you the honest truth, I really enjoy Twitter because you can do longer and shorter. You can rant or you can rave. These are the things that I love about these types of platforms. And I still enjoy Facebook because I can mess around with the algorithm. And I also enjoy it with Instagram because I can confuse it. So my search sometimes, can be entirely like the most arbitrary things that I've been watching. So this is the interesting part is, I tend to agree with you that you want to see something special, that you want to give in something special. But what I say, what is special is that's defined by you as the founder. Going to market, yes, it is important. How you go to market, these types of things. But I can tell you right now, with how fast tech is growing, and sometimes the best marketing strategies, can also fail. And you can throw money at it. I can't tell you how many times I've paid school money. Huge amounts of money. Like, and you got to pick up the pieces and you got to answer to it and you got to solve it and you got to fix it. And that's it. And you got to do it in a cost-effective manner because you've lost that money. That money's gone. Bye-bye. Say goodbye to it. Don't delve in the past. Don't cry over the spilt milk. Move forward. And these are the types of things, in my personal opinion, when I sat with investors, this was what they were interested in. How much school money have you paid? What did you learn from that? And that's the kind of thing, like, you got to be open and honest about it. I mean, you go down a certain path and then you find out, like, at like some ending stage, okay, this is not going to work. Okay, what do we do now? Okay, let's kind of like solve it and let's try and find a different route. And then you got to either refactor and redevelop, or you got to go back to the drawing board. Sometimes wrong decisions are made with your infrastructure, and you've got to, we got to relook at certain ways of how you're doing things. And that's part and parcel of being flexible, by the way.
Poke the bag on the answer. Well, we couldn't do the whole podcast just going, All right, let's move on to topic 2. So topic 2 is quite interesting. It's advice for turning ideas into successful businesses. Now, we all know, going to the conferences and going around the circuit, that there are a lot of good ideas. Good ideas being created and turned into something that's actually feasible as a business idea is, I think, part of the magic, frankly. Like, as you said, you've done the magic thing, gone out on your own and started something, and you've built something. You started having those conversations, but you've actually gone and done something, which is, I think, fantastic. Are there any common pitfalls you see emerging tech founders fall into, or is there any sort of advice out the gate?
You want the wife answer, or you want the real answer?
Oh, we go for real, baby.
Real all day.
Number one is ego. I'm going to say straightforward. It doesn't help that you be arrogant. It doesn't help that you're that you think you are the best, you're the next best thing since sliced bread, buttered, toasted on either side, even with a bit of jam and cheese. What I can tell you is rather take the humble approach. The pitfall that I've seen with certain tech startups and with certain founders, and it's not all of them. This is just, it is a dog-eat-dog world. And sometimes you have to have a little bit of an ego to get to a certain place because you got to be cocky.
Fake it until you make it?
That's something I don't agree.
No, it's more of a question. I'm not. This is not a statement that I necessarily agree with. I'm just more like fake it till you make it, because that.
No. I will tell you honestly. I don't believe in fake it till you make it, and the reason being why I don't believe in that is because if you're gonna fake it and you can't solve it, then what the hell do you do? You're going to make it, and then you're going to leave a lot of people disappointed. So you're going to get some investment, or you're going to do a capital raise. Have a look at some of the projects of the ICOs when the ICO world was booming. We'll take a Vauxhall. For those of you who don't know, that's an Opel, or it could even be a Skoda. We're going to take that to the moon, slap a rocket on it and put some wings on it, and that's it, And some people bought into it, and they said, okay, well, all right. And the founders were extremely arrogant about it. They said, we can't do this. Don't worry. You don't need to worry about it. That's exactly not the approach that you got to take. You got to take the humble approach, and you got to take the honest, truthful approach and transparent approach. You got to say, okay, right, listen, you got to be able for someone to be able to challenge you, and don't attack the person. Let the person challenge you. If you really know how to do it, you'll give them the right answer. I always say, sometimes this is why I asked you, do you want me to give you the wife answer or the real answer? And I always say to the people, if you ask me the right question, I will give you the truthful answer. You might not like my answer, but it's subject to my opinion, and it's also, it's going to be the honest truth of what I think or what I've done. And this is the whole thing ego is good in certain parts. Cockiness is good in certain parts. But always remember to be humble. Remember where you come from, and remember why you're doing this. Because that sometimes gets forgotten as a founder of what is the true reason and the true mission on why you're doing these things. And then I would say you should trust your team. As you're growing and your team grows, there's a reason why you're employing them. Put your trust into them. They'll take you there. They'll get you there. This is very important. Don't try and be a control freak. Don't try and micromanage. Delegate. Delegate where it's needed and allow them to sub-delegate, because that is exactly what you need, because you need to free up your time so that you can focus on bringing the business further. This is a very important thing, which I think a lot of founders fall in, because they're extremely concerned, and it's a normal thing. It is, it's like when you start dating. You want to make sure every word you say to the girl or to the guy is absolutely perfect. You want to make sure that you keep on impressing them, and you want to, wine and dine them and showcase them a great time. And, but at some other point, they're gonna have to know you, and you're also going to have to let them be free and trust that they will like you for who you are. No need to showboat or do anything any further, because that's when you know that you're going on the right path. It's all about the growth of the business and being able to hand it over to other people, to trust them, to make sure, because that's why you employ them.
Yep.
Don't lose that part. And then you have to understand, you as the founder is not necessarily the smartest person in the room. That is a very important thing to remember. Even though you thought of the technology, doesn't mean that you know everything about it. And sometimes you gotta be the quiet guy in the room, and you gotta listen and learn. And that is a very important thing that I see many founders sometimes fall into, is falling into that habit of when they started it, it was all you're driving the engine, you're doing everything, you're putting everything in, and you can't understand. You have to also be understanding towards other people. You got to understand that not everyone has the drive, the thrive, and the willingness as much as you do to get it into that stage. You got to be patient, and you got to be understanding, and then listen. Those are the things that I can say we as founders need to always remember. And sometimes I even need to be reminded of it. And sometimes my father, sometimes Rastislav, sometimes even our team leads need to be reminded of it. But it's normal that you get so passionate or fired up about something, and you kind of like lose a little bit a sense of reality at that time. So hence, this too shall pass.
We've got an interesting point here, which is, and this is something I preach all the time, which is validate the market needs before you start coding stuff. I usually advise my clients to pre-sell it if you can, to ensure that people want to buy what it is you're selling or what it is you intend to spend $1 million on building. Do you agree? Is that something that you've taken the track towards? Is research enough?
Research is one thing. We have an amazing research team. When we want to do particular things, when we want to expand on particular use cases, in some way, I would agree with you, and in some way, I would say you have to be careful. This was exactly what I was saying before. If you're going to do crowdfunding, or if you're going to do pre-sales, make sure you can deliver the product. Make sure you can give or that there's a demand for the service. There's many creative and unique ways in how you can do it. Being in the Web3 and being in the blockchain industry, selling a token, which is a utility token, which can be exchanged for a service. Firstly, make sure that your token is a utility token, that it is a service that you're selling. Yes, the placement is that the individual is placing in there. It's not an investment. They're buying a utility or a future of a utility of a service. That's what a utility token does. And if you have the means to do that, and you know that you can deliver the service, apart from doing the research, start a little bit in dabbling with the development itself. Start the process already with a little bit of funding and elaborate in it. You'll see very fast whether you can or can't. And this is, sometimes you are unlucky that at a later stage, I mean, I will tell you, there were a few times where we thought, okay, right, we're going to be ready. And then we hit number 99. And just before we're going to release, we had delays. We had hell of a delays. And they're imminent to happen to you as a startup. It is any startup that says to you that it will not happen. I don't care how good your team is. It's going to happen. You're going to have delays, and you're going to have things that you come up with and you say, I can't release the software like this, because you always got to remember and remind yourself that it is about your customers and not about the software itself. If the software cannot deliver it properly to the customers and the customer is not protected, don't release it. Rather, fix the problem so that you make sure that you are 100% sure that your customers are protected. This is an important thing, specifically if you're building something like an exchange or building something like a swapping platform or a wallet or anything of that sort, or a connector even. That is very, very important. And I tend to agree with you in certain aspects of it where, pre-sell if possible. But it's like I said, make sure you can deliver and make sure there is a demand for the service, because otherwise what you sold is going to be air.
And there is an interesting point to that, Charlie, because like I generally I like that perspective a lot. Since our market is like definitely in Web3, but also now the AI market is just it's a crazy bull, right? Like even if you sometimes pre-sell, I am wondering that like once you build it, and let's say you even do the MVP, and let's say your MVP is 3 months, and it's the greatest single happy path that you've ever built for the client. They might have maybe moved on because the market moves so fast.
Yes.
Like I always joke, I'm very happy I'm not a product company and I'm not running a product company, not in this environment, because the environment is super competitive. So, and I'm like, I think if you are, so, and the reason I'm saying this, Charlie, is because of AI. Like if you look at how many LLM-based apps are coming out right now, I'm pretty sure every first mover advantage that you had in that market is gone within a month because somebody else built something different, or the model took that and now it does that natively. So your startup is poof gone.
Yeah. This is the risk that you take.
It's the risk that you and I think that the blockchain is a little bit slower at the moment, luckily. But like if you look at LLM specifically, I think if you can pre-sell that and then retain your customers, that's a really thin line, I think, to walk.
Yeah, this is why I said exactly what I said. Make sure that you can maintain and sustain the service, and that it will be a lasting service that you're actually putting out. You see, the interesting thing is we're extremely fortunate to have my father, because my father is. I'd like to say that he's a visionary in many aspects, and he already foresaw problems that we're going to run into. MiCA regulation. He saw that already like 4 or 5 years ago. He saw things like decentralized storage, deepen RWA. We were talking about this 4 or 5 years ago. I can show you a board right at the beginning when we started this project in 2013. We actually have a drawing on a whiteboard, which he drew out. And we were talking about the circular economy and how real-world assets need to enter into a digital environment. And we didn't have RWA or anything like this. We just spoke about decentralized digital attributes. That's what we spoke about. That's what we called it. So, and we actually refer to it as DAMP, Decentralized Attribute Management Platform. And these are the things that we already spoke about, and also about stable tokens and things like this, the issues that they will run into, certain parts of being decentralized with it, being transparent, open source, these types of things. It was very interesting now to look at now versus when we started the development. We were extremely fortunate with that. And that's why we're actually right on the cusp of the timing of releasing the Luna Mesh and releasing these platforms, because now people are talking about it and they're trying to find a solution, but it's going to take you years to catch up, because I can tell you it is a hell of a process to develop. You need an extraordinary team, and it doesn't need to be a big team. It just needs to be a really clever team to know exactly how to do it. And you will understand that you need so many different components, because there comes permission protocols and all kinds of things that actually needs to come with it, because now you need to understand, if you're going to put it into a decentralized environment and it is secure, trusted data that you want to actually distribute over a public network, it's got to be wrapped, secured. It's got to have a new form of steganography. It's got to have a new form of encryption, decryption, these types of things. It's got to have a permission protocol that's got to come with it, which is actually utilizing the blockchain to verify that the data is correct, to verify that you got the permission, and all these. It just adds on and adds on and adds on and adds on, and by the time that you get to actually, okay, we're going to release the deep end, it's like, shit.
Scope creep is a very, very, very important thing.
Question mark?
Sorry, I went on a rant there, but
no, I really, again, this is relating to like one of the final pieces in this brainstorm, which is, father. We say a mentor, a visionary. How, if you're, part of mine and Thomas's sales pitch is, we know stuff, we've been there, we've done it, we shorten your learning curve and accelerate the rate of growth of your business, in essence, at a high level. Essentially, part of that is mentorship. It's coaching people through their own shortcomings to understanding actually the answer is either right in front of them or taking a different direction. How do you go about finding mentors? What do you reckon what would you suggest is the best route forward for doing that?
I'm again. I know what you do, and probably you're not going to like my answer so much.
That's fine.
But it's subject to my opinion. Look, I believe that you don't find mentors find you, in my humble opinion. You can't go out looking for a mentor, because a mentor is someone that starts understanding you and you have a click in a relationship with. And it's about being able to put your trust into that individual to go there. There are multiple different types of mentors. I would say I'm extremely fortunate to have my father, to be as close. We have a very unique relationship, which I'm exceptionally lucky to have. I work with my dad. He's one of my best friends. I live right next door to him. We're thick as thieves, but we can fight like crazy, even, but there's always that form of respect that we both have for each other. And finding mentors and things like this, it's quite interesting. Along your path of where you're developing and where you go into social environments, and when you least expect it, you're going to meet someone that you're going to say, damn, that guy knows what he's talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And, there's nothing wrong with giving someone a compliment. Don't crawl up their bum. But, we have a more crass way of saying it, don't both smoke up their ass. But at the end of the day, what you want to do is if you find someone like that, stay in communication, stay in touch, ask them here and there a question. Don't bombard them. Start it slowly if you believe that this is someone that you think you can learn from. Because what else is mentorship? It is about being able to say, okay, I'm going to take the time to listen to this individual's opinion because I think his opinion matters. Mm-hmm. And that is very personal. That is very individual-like. It depends on whether you have a connection with the person or not. Maybe sometimes this person might say, damn, this guy keeps on asking me questions and I don't know why. And you can irritate the living damn out of the guy.
It's a one-sided street sometimes.
Yeah. So my suggestion is don't go out looking for mentors, but rather let it happen naturally. You will find them. You will. I have my trusted people that I talk to, even if it's just to have a conversation. And one thing I want to say is A mentor might not necessarily be older than you. Can be someone younger because they have different life experience. This is something that you also need to remember. You can always also learn from a younger person with different types of experiences, different types of cultures, different types of things. That's very important to be open-minded about such things, because even if you are older and you think you have more experience, that individual might have different experience that you don't have that you could learn from. Specifically, if you want to enter into a market or if you want to do something, they can give you advice on that. And that is the important thing that one has to know, is be open and flexible to that, and allow someone that even if you think that they're inexperienced, allow them to give you sometimes some advice, because it might change your perspective on something.
You have an answer for everything, don't you? No. But without. I think that's a beautiful take on mentorship. Not in the last place, because I've been. I used to work in healthcare for 8 years before I actually went into tech, and I was always the youngest in the room, and definitely least experienced. And I got at some point to a level, because my youngest next colleague was 10 years older.
Mm-hmm.
I was 19, she was 29, and then that just went up to almost 63, only women. What I found beautiful about that relationship, that they were all in a sense mentors to me. But at some point I got promoted, and I became like coordinator counselor. So that meant that I was putting out the lines and vision and everything, and I think I was 22. They were still 10 years older, and it worked beautifully. And I'm not saying like, oh my God, I'm the smartest guy in the room. Absolutely not. Like I love to be the dumbest guy in the room, but that is one of those moments where, looking back now, 10 years, like 10, 12 years later, looking back now, I'm like, wow, that they were so open-minded to listen to a guy who was 22 who came in and had some fucking crazy ideas, right? Yeah. And it worked. Like, it worked because they listened. And I think from a mentor perspective, that is, if you open your mind a little bit for that, your mindset, then you can find interesting mentors in unexpected places.
I also want to say to some mentors, not that I'm saying I'm a mentor at all, because I don't see myself in that position at all, but sometimes you are a mentor and you don't even know that you're a mentor to someone. This is sort of like something that I have found, where some people didn't know that I'm using them as a mentor, to listen to their advice and their life experience, to understand certain things that I need answers to, because I'm trying to look at certain avenues, and they didn't even know that I'm using them as mentors. Some of them I still do.
Shout out to the anonymous mentors. No, seriously, I think that like it's a very good point. Like, I think a lot of people don't understand sometimes the impact that they have on people's life just by being there and having that conversation.
Yeah, that's 100% true. I don't know, Charles. I don't know what your take is on that. Being a mentor.
Well, no. So mentor for different funds. So they basically send their startups to me, and so my specialism's in business operations. I think, and my thesis is that you can pretty much like solve a lot of problems with process.
Yeah.
100%. And even, I mean, so this is why my thesis is, you have your strategy, then operations, then your marketing, right? That's the way I go about doing things. And usually most of the problems in marketing and how do you get your clients, how do you give better customer service, all this other kind of stuff, is process orientated. And people always come on a mentorship call and they're like, so I've got this plethora of problems. Usually it surrounds the 3 areas of business, right? I need more clients. My clients aren't making me enough money. I'm not managing that money correctly. And I ask them the question, what's your unit economics? And they go,
what is that word?
Yeah, and you're like, well, let's start there. I'll speak to you next week. Kind of thing.
Go and read.
Yeah.
Pretty much, yeah. And I think everything kind of spawns from that. And that's why I find like our conversation really enlightening, because I think I've become a bit hardened after a while. You're just like, let's do the basic stuff, because I think success comes from doing the basic stuff really, really, really well.
Yeah.
And I think that's a popular opinion now, but it wasn't when I first started saying it. It was more like, where's your genius? You don't have any creativity. And I'm like, well, money's ones and zeros, dude. And that's why I run Aspect, because I want to work on the exciting problems. So we're brains for hire, in essence. We have a playbook that can run the basic stuff, because to us it's basic, and I think to Thomas's point earlier, it's snow blindness from knowing stuff. And to wrap in your point of, you never know who's going to teach you something. But what gets me hyped is when you've got a large organization or a rapidly growing organization, and you're like, okay, we need to put some guide rails in. We need to draw the outline of the football pitch on this thing. And then you're starting to get into like operations in terms of like service lines, or are you going to have flat structure, and how's that going to work? That stuff I find academically sexy. Maybe I'm unique in that, but that's, everyone's got a thing, and mine is efficiency. How can we get this done quicker, cheaper, faster, whilst keeping everybody happy and healthy? So from the mentorship point of view, to square that circle, I think everyone's got 1 to 3 things that they're oriented towards, whether it's exploration, whether it's building something quicker or faster, or finding the vision. And I think you can have a few conversations with someone, and they'll be able to help you with that naturally. And I think it's on you to be awake enough to accept that when it's offered.
Yeah, I would call it humble, actually.
Yeah.
And sometimes humble and right time, right place, because you can get great advice and get great mentorship, but your time is just not there. Yeah. Which is a really weird thing to say, but it has a lot to do with where you then are, your time and experience and in your career. And then sometimes just it doesn't land. Like you can give really sound advice and then just say, no, this is incredibly stupid. So I'm saying this from experience, by the way.
I didn't want to say this.
Wait a second, did I just say that?
This sounds very oddly familiar.
No. All right. Well, there's one final point on the brainstorm, which is there's only one way, and I think that will be the final.
I was gonna say because we're running heavily out of time.
Yeah.
Okay, there is only one way. There is literally only one way. Never lose hope. And you gotta sit many, many, many hours in one room, navigate through your differences, work out the kinks, put everything together, and just continue. Perseverance. That is the only way in how you can achieve anything in a startup industry. I can tell you, I think perseverance is probably the most important thing, because you're going to hit stages in your startup where you're going to be just before release. You're going to be very thinly strapped on cash. You're going to struggle to make ends meet. But just keep on keeping on, because that's what's going to see you through. If you can keep on keeping on, find the means, do the things, don't get attached to certain things. If you need to sell it, if you need to do something to keep it alive, do it, because that's what's going to see you through. That's what I mean with live, breathe, and eat it. And that's the only way to do this, is really the belief in it. This is the most important part. You cannot do it in any other way. I don't know of any other startup that hasn't had troubles, hasn't had difficulties. I, I, I want to give one piece of advice, if there is advice that I give.
I mean, this has been a great podcast so far. I think there's a lot of nuggets of advice here, but please go ahead.
But if this is what I see as an advice to someone, when you get to that point of number 99, you're strapped for cash, you haven't slept in a few days, you're absolutely exhausted, your team's exhausted, they're all everyone's demotivated, everyone's just like, let's just release it, okay, let's just do it. And then when you release it, when you think you've worked 100% to do it, once that thing's released, you're working 110%. Don't think it's over. That's where the most challenging part comes. Be prepared when you are releasing, because I can tell you right now, certain things that we had just before the release, I mean, I can tell you one thing. Just before we released the blockchain, an hour before we released it, all the connectivity went down. Everything. We couldn't find out what the problem is, and it was certain infrastructures that went down. That is infrastructure. Not our fault, and we couldn't find the problem, and we're checking and we're watching. We ended up moving certain parts out of it, and I mean, this is like 500-600 kilograms. We're 4 guys. It's got to carry this. It's got to move the things around, and we made it. We put it in, and 5 minutes later, the infrastructure comes on. So things can happen that you don't foresee. You can't even think of that it will happen. And it's the same as when you're released. The second you release, and there can be a small little bug that you didn't pick up or something like this. So check. But you cannot do enough checks because you're going to find it. But be prepared to fix it. Be prepared at all given moments, because you're going to work 110% after the release. That you got to make sure that everything's running, everything's operational, everything maintains, everything's secured. This is the piece of advice that I can give you is don't think you've hit the finishing line. You've only hit the starting line when you released it, because that's when shit gets real. And that's when it gets really tough. You are actually in a rosy phase of when you're in development. You're in a comfortable phase because you don't have to deal with clients. You don't have to deal with issues that comes up. You don't have to deal with the unexpected or anything like this. It's once you've released, make sure you have support. Make sure you have the plan. Make sure you've got your team on call, that they know that they got to be there. They got to fix it. They got to help you. That is the most important. And you as the founder, don't think it's not your job not to check it. It's your job. Make sure you continuously check it. And it's not to check on your team. It's to give yourself the reassurance that everything's okay. Awesome. Sorry, that's my piece of advice. That's the only thing I think I can say.
Oh, now I'm gonna move us into the last section of the show. This is your desert island essentials. This is the part of the show where if we were going to stick you in a time warp, row you on a raft to your own startup desert island, you have no bags, you have no black book, no communication, no VC relationships or inheritance. What if you're starting your journey again? What would you bring with you to give your younger self a leg up?
I thought about this for quite some time.
I know, because he said to me this yesterday, can I do it tomorrow morning? And I said, yes, of course.
But I was sitting on this for quite some time. Actually, the first time that I saw it, when you asked me the first time when we had just a brief little discussion about it, I've been thinking about this. And I know that you're expecting that I should say something physical like a course or go and study that. Or actually, read this book. Or if I'm going to be really honest with you, the startup industry and being an entrepreneur, specifically in disruptive technology, There's nothing. There's nothing that you can actually go and study and things. If you're developing something that has never been developed before, there's no Google that you can go and search. Yeah, you can search certain components of it, but how to put it together, good luck. It is extremely hard. So the 5 things that I would say that you take with you is you got to take your courage. You got to take an open-minded approach with a positive attitude. You know, you got to say, yes, we can. Yes, I can, and yes, we can. And the reason why I say yes, we can is because you got to make sure you got a team to do it, because you can't do it just on your own. You can start on your own, but you gotta get a team to bring it further. Perseverance, because you just got to keep on keeping on. If you don't keep on keeping on, you will not get anywhere. Then I would say read, learn, research, and listen. Those are very important aspects. It's again, you're not the most cleverest in the room. You're not the smartest person in the room. At the same time, the more you read and the more you start understanding, the more research that you do to define certain things, the more knowledgeable you get. And when someone gives you an opinion, listen to the opinion. You know, my grandfather once said to me, I was very young, and bless his soul, he's not with us anymore today. But he said to me, I asked him for a piece of advice. And he said to me, he gave me the advice. And then I started arguing with him about his advice. And he said to me, listen, I'm going to teach you a lesson today. And he said, if you ask me for my advice, it's my opinion. My opinion's not to be argued with. You can discuss it if you like, but don't argue with me. It's my opinion and I'm entitled to it. Take the advice and do with it what you will. It's up to you how you apply it and how you approach it. And that's a valuable lesson that I learned at a very, very early stage. And this is where listening actually comes from, is my father and him embedded it into me. And the one thing that I would say that you take with you, and this is an important thing. It's my favorite thing, and I've said it a few times, and I'm going to say it again. Tom Hanks, this too shall pass. Specifically for those rainy days. And also for your hype days. Remember, when you've achieved something and you feel on top of the world and you're absolutely... You want to celebrate it. You're so damn proud of it. You're proud of your team. You're proud of yourself. You feel that no one can take anything away from you. That stage is gonna pass. And when you are down and out and tough and thunder clouds are above your head, the thunder and lightning is hitting, the rain is pouring, and you fall into a depression, don't fall into the depression. Keep the positive attitude, but just sit and wait it out. That is so important. Tom Hanks cannot say it better, because definitely time is your ally. This is what he says in that. Listen to it over and over. I listen to it so many times. Whenever I need a pick me up or a little, go get him tiger kind of thing. That sounds very corny. but when I need sometimes that thing, that's exactly the thing that I listen to. Of course, my wife is, she's my backbone. She's the neck. She turns the head,
Nice.
But what I can say is she's my support in infrastructure, and this is very important: is to have that support infrastructure. Make sure you have that, because sometimes you need that support. Really, really, you need it, and this you can get either through mentors, or you can get it at home, or you can get it in your team. But support each other and make sure you have a support infrastructure to do this, because they'll help you and motivate you to get through the toughest of times.
Well, Ockert, I can't thank you enough for being on this marathon of a podcast with us.
I don't think we've ever shot 4-hour podcast before.
Has it been 4 hours? Oh my goodness.
It is 4 hours. You've been sitting with us since 5.
To be fair, we've taken some breaks. So. Well, we didn't start till half an hour in. But yeah, thank you for being with us. Do tell the audience where they can find you and what you'd like them to look at next and how they can get in touch.
Okay, well, I would say go and have a look at the CoreTech.cc website. There you'll see the entire ecosystem. Go and have a look at corepass.net. That's our digital identity, a decentralized digital identity, which is privacy first. And also that I can say it puts you as the individual in control of your data, because your data has value. And we believe that you should be able to monetize it, not the large platforms. The next thing, and you should be able to trace it, by the way. The next thing is Ping Exchange. If you're interested in our coin and our token, you can go and have a look at Ping Exchange, ping.exchange itself. That's the website. And lastly, if you're interested to see what we're doing in our public listed company, it's arax.cc. And you can find me on Twitter anytime, or Mate, or on CoreTech. All our platforms are on Twitter, so you're welcome to reach out to us there if you want to talk to us. We're here about interoperability, integrating, merging Web 2 to Web 3, as well as expanding on Web 3 into Web 4, because some things in Web 3 didn't work that well out. So. But that's a wrap.
That's a wrap.
All right. Do you want to close this out, Thomas?
All right. Well, if you got as far as we got today, 4 hours in, or probably a little less, thank you for listening. Ockert, thank you for being here and discussing this with us. I personally loved it. I think it was an amazing discussion. I hope you enjoyed it too. For our listeners, like, subscribe. Tell us what you think. There were a lot of interesting pieces on leadership, on building. I think some spicy takes too. So let us know what you think. We'd love to converse or fight you in the comments if we have to. But we'll see you next week with a brand new episode. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, guys. Thank you for your time, and I'm sorry that I spoke so much. My mouth actually feels it. But thank you very much for the time. And definitely like and subscribe and follow.